whether they can carry that over from last week.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of wonder, though, is a team like Alpha 7, for instance, when we look at the number of placements compared to the number of eliminations that they get, it seems like they're usually able to average it out pretty well. They're able to find a good balance between the two. But my biggest concern is if they aren't able to keep that up, if they aren't able to get that momentum going, if they maybe do slip on the elims, do they start to slip down the leaderboards? Or do you think that Alpha 7 is just a squad where they can consistently go through, get eliminations, and pick up a lot of points alongside it?
I am very optimistic. I have faith in them. Experience extremely important. They've been starting, a little bit low compared to where we want them to be in the past, but they were able to come back, right? So we're just going to wait and see.
Yeah, tonight, though, it's very Erangel heavy. 3 maps of Erangel, 1 of Miramar and Sandhawk. So we're getting a bit of everything in there tonight. It's going to be exciting. And I do wonder how teams tend to adapt to this kind of difference in map pool. Obviously, Sandhawk coming in, being such a small map, and then immediately having to go back to Erangel. I got to ask, do you think it's one of those situations where Sandhawk will kind of kick everything into gear and Erangel brings it down? Do you think that the momentum is just going to flow through from Sandhawk over to that last Erangel game, and it's just going to be a mess? That's probably the best bit.
I think it's going to be a mess, Junks. This is the thing. It comes down to the strength of the team. We've got some of these hype house type of teams where when they get, when they have a good game, they carry over to the rest of the day or even the week. But sometimes teams aren't like that, right? We've got teams who, if they have a small slip, they are going to start to choke themselves. So it really depends on how they get that victory, let's say, if they get that chicken dinner on Sandhawk, if it's a very dominating one where they just really, outsmart everybody, fight through the circles when it's not on their side, that will be the real confidence boost.
Yeah, it will. You got to have that confidence. You got to go forward. And I think that's the real test for the teams down at the bottom tonight. Obviously, only just having qualified, only just making it here, it feels like a lot of pressure on them. But at the same time, maybe they come into it with the attitude of, okay, there's a lot of top teams in this lobby. Let's just go out, prove what we can do, and worry about the rest later. And I'm excited to see how those bottom teams come in. Maybe don't care as much, as bad as that sounds, and just go in, get aggressive early and start taking fights, because that's what we love about PUBG Mobile.
Oh, exactly. And that's the thing, right? You need to see what's on the table, and you just need to make sure that you focus on one game at a time. If you have too much of that carried over from the previous game, sometimes it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, it's about being able to reset mentally. So, look, we've spoke a lot about this tonight. There's a lot more to come. Taking a look over at the maps, 1 Miramar in there. We spoke about how 1 Sandhawk can maybe affect things. How do teams really switch between Miramar and Erangel? For anyone who maybe hasn't seen PUBG Mobile before, you can see looking over at Erangel, there's a couple teams that have just done extremely well when it comes to consistently getting up there.
It's very interesting here, Jones, because we don't see Alpha 7 in here. And that's the problem, when you have been dominating, because we have a very decent mix across the 3 maps and coming back into 3 games out of 5 being on this classical map. There are more studying to do. They need to look at the macros. They have to form these spreadsheets and see how they can capitalize. But Loops being in there is great to see them back, right? They were those kings from the West, from this region back in 2020. They had a huge roster change. Most of those have gone to what you see on that second place, the Influenced Rage. So there might be a friendly rivalry there. I'm not quite sure, but after all, there might be a little bit of drama and a lot of action.
I will say, looking down and seeing Black Dragons up there, maybe a bit of a surprise for some people, a team that have been, unfortunately, a little bit inconsistent at times. Do you think that now we've got Erangel coming up tonight, it's going to be their opportunity to really shine and show exactly what they're worth?
Potentially. It's all down to how they find those early few fights, I think, of a day. That's really important to develop and get the feel of the characteristics of a team. If they're that team that will have that type of fight and have it go well and carry over, brilliant. If not, they need to have the mentality, like you said, to continue to play at their best and just keep adjusting. And 3 maps of Erangel, you can test things back to back to back. But after all, we need to wait for those playing path and circles to bring us, to see who's in luck when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think a big problem that may come up for a couple of these teams that may be coming in fresh, they're going to try and kick things off with a bang. If they do decide to maybe hot drop or take an early game fight, they maybe lose 1 or 2 players. It's really got to affect the mentality, hasn't it, in terms of going forward throughout the rest of the game. If you lose a player early on, do you think it's realistically feasible you go on to win the game? Or do you just try and play for as many elimination points as possible then?
I would just play for the rotation game, like sometimes you need to position yourself in the way that you can get most things done with the least effort, right? So you just need to read it well, go back to thinking, oh, I know this other team that share the same segment as I do, and then we just see how we can punish them a little bit, but not fully engaging, right?
Yeah, taking a look over at Loops, though, this is a team that are really up there at the top end of things, consistently getting up there, currently averaging 4.7 eliminations per game. That is a lot to see, and I think it shows that they are such an exciting squad to watch. Maybe you can fill me in on the rest of these stats, because I'll be honest, my Portuguese maybe needs a little bit of practice.
Not very good either, but I would say the second would be damage. And here's the thing, Junks, when we get to 4 digits, you know they are an actively aggressive squad. If they don't really take fights head on, then they know how to capitalize. So that is a really, really good stat to see. We hope that we'll stay at the thousands, but we just really need to, find out, because after all, these, final 3 days of the week is a different beast, like I said, in Erangel, because you get to experience it so much as well. You've got a lot more data to work with, and whoever don't get to play that mind game well may get hunted down.
Yeah, I think it's a case of being able to prepare as much as possible. I wonder, for the top teams, the lobby, are we going to see them be able to prepare? Because obviously these teams that are coming through now that haven't played any games, sure, there's a couple of odds you can go and review on them, but how much can you really read into those when you're coming up to basically a higher tier of competition? It's just reached a new level for these squads, and they have to try and bring something new to the table, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. That is the term that I want to use as well. Something new to the table. And if they are the type of team who has a very fixed style, very fixed, way of playing the game, and it works every time, that's great. But will that be, prone to getting hunted down if it's just, a pattern that's very, very predictable? If it's a team that's constantly getting points, no matter where the circle is, they're extremely flexible and very good in these ad hoc things. Amazing. That is actually the best style.
Yeah, I do wonder, though, what about these teams that are maybe more experienced, that are maybe going to have a bit of thorn in their side when it comes to these new squads coming through? Or do they have to adjust their game plan? Is it going to be a case of maybe one of these new squads comes in and they think, you know what, we're going to come out swinging, we're going to hunt down one of the top teams, prove that we're the best, deny some points in the process, maybe going for that long haul journey, thinking, hey, if we can deny them, if we can deny a top team a couple points now, then a week down the line, we could be in a much better position going forward, not only into 15th, 16th, into the top 10, into the top 8, something like that. So if you're thinking about a strategic hot drop or something, do you kind of target a middle of the pack team, a bottom of the pack team, a top of the pack? What are you going for there?
So exactly what I said earlier as well. You need to find those teams that seem to crumble under pressure. So that means that attack will be a lot more useful. You need to find the team that will really just struggle for the rest of the day whenever they have, a poor start. And I think that's the thing, right? And that's going to be the strategy coming in. And of course, hot drop is one way, playing safe is another way, but Chunks, there's so much middle ground. Sometimes you just need to punish a team, not on spawn, not on the drop, but on the first rotation. So that's where the homework come in, and I really, really want to see a lot more.
Yeah, it's about that research, isn't it? And that's what these newer teams are going to try and struggle with. But, I mean, the middle of the pack teams, I think, are the ones that are almost the most exciting right now, the ones that we should maybe talk about a bit more, because there is a lot for these teams to prove. They have maybe had a bit of an iffy week number 1. Now they want to come back and step things up. Looking at squads like Ints, Black Dragons, big names out there. Vivo Key, potentially, I'd expect them to be a little bit higher up than they are.
Yeah, I think here's the thing as well, Chunks. There has been a change as our esport mature. Like in the past, we may have a completely new set of team every split, but they now know that they need to still play at the end of the year in that fall split. So that really brings in a very different mentality when it comes to well, do we test things here? Of course, we know there's prize money on the line, but you want to, if you found a way, you want to continue to use that and to be very versatile for the whole competitive year. You won't get punished for getting removed from the PMPL. So that is the biggest change, and that really allows a lot more possibilities.
Yeah. Map number 1, though, now finally getting underway. We're kicking things off with a wrangle tonight. Obviously, 3 wrangles being played. So, you know what? If you're trying to make your predictions, you're trying to guess who's going to win, I think that game number 1 is maybe going to give a lot of people a good insight into how things are really going to unfold going forward. So, fingers crossed it's going to be an exciting one here. Any wacky circles you just want to throw out now and hope for the best? Hope we get them?
Mate, just give me those bridges, man. Like, when it's really hard to know which side it's going to go, that is the best one, and that is the plane path to do it. On that southern side, from Mill to Power all the way to Corey, we have very southern plane path. So if we draw another line, faintly from Mansion to maybe Hospital, everything to the north there will be slightly harder to reach, unless you have incredibly good parachuting skills. Otherwise, you got to find a car.
The plane bodes well for the circle, doesn't it? I feel like it's a hint. If you want those bridges, this is the plane to get it on. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you. I want to see you get the zone that you want, you know, kick things off well for us.
You know what, like, it's all those quirky things sometimes, right? We've got small changes around the structures of those bridges, so I want to keep seeing these teams being creative, finding new ways, you know, to dominate. And we can see 2-3 teams now heading towards that South Island. Sosnovka is one of my personal favorites, but that's mostly for classic. And but this is a completely different ground, and we can see a lot of congestion, seems like, around the Mansion site. So top right of the map will be quite the favorite here.
Yeah, we were definitely a little bit concerned when it came to new teams coming into the lobby, potential hot drops coming through. I think it is something that those northeastern teams maybe need to be concerned about, but how much do you think it's going to weigh on their mind when it comes to rotations? Do you assume they're all going to have vehicles they should be able to pretty easy, or could it maybe end up being a problem having a couple squads around the same area?
I think it's going to be very interesting. Once again, 1, down to research, and 2, they have to have a very good scout, right? Like, who knows how to get close enough to get info, but far enough to retreat. And we know there's so many choke spots around the Lumber area and Milta, and that's for those teams to find out how to maneuver through. Of course, phase 1 efficiency extremely important. If you just grab a few things and you just go straight away to dominate those choke points, that might be very good for you. But some other teams may just even tank 1 phase or 2, like with the circle still being very indecisive, with the bridges separating the north and the southern east. So we will have a lot to wonder.
Look, I know I'm speaking about America's Elite League lots, but that's because it's been an amazing event to cast, and I'm hoping for the same thing. I'm just going to say it. The other night, we had a very similar Phase 1 circle. We ended up over on those cliffs, like on the very south of the main island. So I'm keeping my hopes up we get something like that here.
I do like a good mix, Chunks. I think like these 3 Erangel maps should not disappoint me, and I do love a mix of some very classical spots. So teams keep evolving through how to play around it, but also too, right? You go to somewhere really, really far away, so they have to utilize that skill to analyze on the spot, right, and come up with something. And after all, that's the type of play that we want to have. We are 4 years into this game now, Chunks. 4 years anniversary, and I don't know when's the actual birthday, but we have grown a lot since then, and this scene is just extremely vibrant, and we are still flourishing.
Absolutely. I think now that we're finally, you know, we're getting to the point in PUBG Mobile now where it's definitely, we're fully established, the teams know what they're doing. There's occasionally some newcomers that come through, but we kind of have almost a pecking order over here on which teams are the ones that consistently on regional and global competitions, which ones are maybe not quite there yet. Not going to wipe them out not going to wipe them out from anything in future. You know, it's still a possibility, but if we're looking at teams like Influence Rage, for example, a team that have huge promise but currently sat in 6th position, do you think that they're a team on the rise that can really get to those globals in the future, or do you think that right now it is just a case of working through, practicing, progressing bit by bit, and not really focusing too much on the long-term goals and more so on the here and now?
Well, I think you just, as a team, and as someone who has small bits of coaching experience, you do need to have some objectives, like listing out, right? Like through scrims, you have something to train on. And then, of course, for a tournament like this, you need to have objectives once again. Don't focus on too many things, but I think for this particular squad, Influence Rage, they just need to find consistency almost. They're huge players. We know that, almost huge brands. Like they've got so much fans. And that is where they can really use that to fuel yourself instead of distracting yourself. I think like last time round we were so disappointed that they didn't even get to qualifications like PMGC. Like we're losing huge potential, huge players, big names. So this time round, like this is a whole competitive year. Like I said, like you won't get kicked out, but then you work on that sustainability, right? Like so you develop your brand, but you also find the best way to play it, because they do have a mix in that roster. In the past, I know, half a year to say the least, seems like there's more for them to explore and more to exploit.
I wonder, look, how many of these teams right now are going to come in here and maybe don't have pressure on their backs? And I think that right here, F4 maybe going to be one of those squads. Team Fact currently fairly low down the standings, but at the end of the day, still having a decent number of points to start things off. It's got to be a bit of a confidence boost. But after you play 15 games and you're still lacking points, is it one of those situations where, okay, we're maybe a bit nervous going into these matchups now? Or do you think it's more of the fact of, okay, we've proven that we can stack up those points. Now we can take it easy, just focus on what we go for elims, go and play for the late game and really work for the long-term goals as opposed to the short term of, oh, let's just win this game.
Yeah, I think long-term goals very important, and that's really coming from those bot reviews, I'd say. And you've mentioned a great team, right? Like F4 or Fact, and they were one of those 4 teams who were not invited back. So they fought their way through qualifications to come here. You can say that is a huge confidence boost to know that they fought through so many teams to finally arrive at the stage. But 2, they can also be, the less experienced team. So, like coming in here, like the objective, like you mentioned, could be just gaining experience. Like they know they are here to stay. They've gained a spot for them for the whole competitive year. So I would have loads of confidence boost if I can just take some good fights here and there. But you are just going to maybe focus more on how to refine your own play, right? So you establish your style. You focus on yourself before playing reactive to how other people play. And I think that is what we've seen on the global stage as well, a few months back. The teams who have found comfort in their own style will be adapting better. They know what's in their arsenal to really fight these battles.
I think we spoke a lot about these teams that are maybe on the rise, but I think we should maybe fund this game itself right now, because we had a very southern playing path, a fairly southern circle, probably one of the more southern circles that we tend to get on a wrangle, but a lot of teams instead actually opted places like Yaz and Georgia Pole to try and loot. I wonder what you take on that. You think it is viable to maybe spend a bit more time going and get into your loot spot, knowing the rotations, and then playing your standard game plan in? Or is it better not to take the risk, go for somewhere that maybe isn't going to have as high tier loot, or you go for the center? Or is it just a case of every team will make a different decision?
Yeah, it's completely different. It's down to the style. I think when it comes to the highest tier of teams, we've seen early center claiming teams who can do very, very well, but that's a particular set of challenge, right? But we also have some other teams who just doesn't panic at all. Like on the outskirts, they know how to efficiently scout, they know how to clear the edges, and they know how much space they have. So that is a really hard question to answer, but it will be answered through this game as we see some of these teams slowly coming in, and no one wants to tank too much of that blue, and that seems to be the progression through the tiers of teams as well. In tier 1 or in pro teams, they do feel like it's better to get in position. Otherwise, we will lose that spot to punish others. And as we see a lot of these teams coming in as well, the bridges are starting to get slightly busier. 3 teams on that southern island, 2 of them have missed out on that first week of the league play. So they are here to redeem themselves as we see the next shift slightly going to the north side, Counts.
That's kind of upset me that I was hoping we could get a milli game to start things off, but I'm not ruling it out. Look, we've had some wacky circles, so it wouldn't surprise me to see this thing pull hard down to the south. I do wonder, though, look, when we're talking about teams that go center and teams that, you know, land on the milli base, it feels like oftentimes they aren't correlated. You get a lot of teams that drop over on Millie Island and end up being a team that really actually kind of prefers playing from the edge, prefers taking fights than posting up. But it looks like we are going to get a fight kicking off early right now as Rai is going to be pulling up onto SMK. It's going to be Matus that starts things off, taking down Mufasa, and it doesn't look like Rai's actually even want to attempt the revive right here.
A bit too far. You can't risk more than that. Just cut the losses, and Mufasa is down as Simba cries. Excuse me. But you know what? That's some joke that we've been using through PMGZ as well. Rise, we do expect more from them with that tier of experience. And but you know what? Here comes a bit of a return.
Looks like Nunez potentially starting to get aggressive. I'm not sure whether the rest of Rise plan to do the same. As he drives around in the vehicle, he's causing a distraction. This is kind of perfect for Rise, though, because now they've managed to get themselves 2 knocks. Smoker down a player out in the open. That could very easily be converted over to elimination to get that point. Nunez opens it up with a couple nades of his own as Matus also trying his best to return them, but it feels like a bit of a stalemate right now until Rise decide to either toss some nades or actually make a push. That's going to happen, though, as Matus comes out on top with the UMP to shut things down. Nunez, Rafinha as the final 2 players up are really going to struggle.
Man, like that pressure has to come in before the revives happen. But look at Rise. They were just not scared, Chunks. Like we said, they lost 1 player. They said, it's go time. Most of the teams just leave. But that was a great effort. But it's not done yet. But unfortunately, just down to 1 player.
The smoke's making things tricky. It seems like Rafinha has an idea. Perfectly called and read. Down he goes. But fortunately, the trade already comes out. It's Matus there to finish off the job. 3 elimination points, but it looks like Alpha 7 hear this. They want to start getting involved. No chance of getting the revive coming out. Carrillo playing a point, and this is what we said about Alpha 7. They are such a confident squad. It doesn't surprise me to see them go for these fights, and equally so, it doesn't surprise me to see Smoke decide to back off of this one.
Interestingly, now that you said that, Chunks, I feel like the sort of Rise know Alpha 7 so well that they know they were on the clock. They need to make some moves, or they just need to just pull something, like before they get third party. And there it went. They tried. Good effort, but not quite enough, as we have most of the teams coming into the farm area. One of those areas, Chunks, that are very harsh on latecomers, right? They just have these open, split compounds, a little bit of dips here and there, and that's pretty much it. But like you said, we still have hope that it will still shift back to that south side.
Yeah, Honoured Souls are really banking on it going down to the south right now. It feels like if it does end up somehow pulling down to that Millie Island again, or just any southern hardship, they're going to be in the perfect position to kind of choke people off and stop people from being able to get where they need to go. But we'll find out about that one in a second. I'm a little bit interested about Brazilian Killer's position right now, though, because they have to know there's a player down this hill, and what a shift that was.
Yeah, and the side of, we look at that southeastern side as well. When we think about these teams on the south, we can see that some of these rotations are really, really weird. Like, you don't even go for the direct way. It's almost like another team behaves in a particular manner, and you're trying to punish them. But seems like the side of Ground Zero would escape and just kind of stay quiet around that eastern bridge. But Not, come on. The circle is extremely far, so let's see what they do. But finally, some action round here, as the circle have only got 20 more seconds before closing.
Sazi going to try and hop in the vehicle, make a move. You can't blame him, but he is being put from above. That's actually a headshot right there coming out from Pools, and it's not going to be able to finish off the job. Or is it? One more bullet might have just done it, and there it is in the end. It's his teammate that finds it. Matuzim with the long-range red dot spray now, just hopping in the vehicle and making a push more than likely, because there is a long way to go. Alpha 7, though, they have just about made it in, and I think this is where they post up and start looking for a couple of limbs.
Well, they are for sure that team who knows how to play this. We call this the Potato Hill. And it's such a classical spot that teams should know how to make use of it. The only problem is, Chunks, there's always this question, like, what does it mean later? if I do this now? Like, yes, it's a classical spot, but if you play loud here, will you be, like choked later on, like rotating out? They have to go extremely wide after that one, and they're not quite sure how much space they have if they go wide, either north or south.
It's doing what they can to try and scout out of this. I'll be honest, I'm not sure whether I like this position. It feels like it's a risky one. I mean, Renan's right now is kind of the point man. If anyone decides to make a push into Pachinki, it feels like those dips are a very likely one to make, and I'm not sure whether you really want to be taking that position when there's the potential that vehicles come flying in and take down to your teammates before you even get to get a shot off, really.
Yeah, like, I'd say sometimes there are two ways, right? There are many ways to play the game, but
Apologies for the technical issues. It looks like Professor Tarzan was having a couple of issues, and we didn't get to see exactly what was going on, but it looks like Flamingo Esports are going to be the first team to fall out in 15th position. Really not ideal. Quick Revenge going to look to live up to their name right now as they conceded a little bit of damage from that team out on the eastern side. So you can see Gazeru now just looking to try and find a little bit of info, a little bit of an opening, but there's no line of sight. Right now, it's just going to be a case of the circle closing through and forcing this squad out. Quick Revenge are really just going to post up, try and make something out of this as they spray through the smokes. Really just nothing coming of it. Quick Revenge now getting ready to make themselves a move as Pachinki starts to get heated. I'd maybe expect that to change soon as the circle closes through, cuts most of it out. Everyone starts to make a move. Quick Revenge going to be one of those squads deciding it's not really worth holding out that squad over to their east in return for an area that's not inside the zone at the moment. Loops, though, very set up near the zone. They are just keeping eyes out, making sure nobody is going to get in. Alpha 7 doing exactly the same, even if they aren't exactly inside the circle yet. As Alpha 7 start to make a move away, you can see Swagwin still just being cautious of behind. If he spots anyone out in the open, you've got to think that Alpha 7 would very quickly go and chase that one down, try and find a couple of eliminations. Down on the south, though, you can see Honored Soul starting to defend against BRK as they move through. It's going to be Myth that opens up first, though, with the UMP to find himself a little bit of an angle, continues to push through further and further, knows that there is going to be players somewhere about, hopping out the window, trying to go for a bit of a pre-fire based purely on audio, but it just hasn't been enough as of yet. Official with the nade tries to throw it somewhere, maybe through a window, but it doesn't look like Honored Souls are really going to fall for a trap. A little bit does come through, but outside of that, nothing much. It really comes down to BRK right now mounting a fight together. They can't take this as two 1v1s, which is seemingly what they're doing. Honored Souls will make a little bit of noise. Myth throws out a nade, but it isn't able to connect. Honored Souls do lose a player to the play zone in the end. Not sure exactly what happened there, but now, as BRK start to move back, it looks like it may just end up being a bit of a stalemate for the time being. I can't see either squad really wanting to push this and overexpose themselves. It's now official. Just going to be holding the window. You can see both players from Brazilian Killers smoking out, doing everything they can to potentially survive. F4 go down in 14th position. So missing out on those placement points as officials just spraying through the smoke, hoping for anything, but still yet to connect. Inco over on that eastern side also just starting to creep their way in, not wanting to make too much noise just yet, but it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. You can see Seagod makes a move through the smoke, narrowly avoids being spotted by Brazilian killers, as now down goes one. It's only going to be official left up, holding the staircase, M4 in hand, ready for the push to come through. Opens up, lands one shot, lands a second, but he can't really follow up with any more. Now it's just a case of Honored Souls pushing through as a team, but it's a nade that starts to open things up. In comes the push. UMP up the stairs, opens up from behind, and in the end, Brazilian killers going down out in 13th position. Not ideal. Honored Soul's going to be happy about it, but fights kicking off all over the place. As smoke now narrowly remaining. It defended off, but Matus is low, and he has to get the revive onto his teammate.
But they know where he is. That's the problem, Junks. Just need to find all the angles, keep spraying, and they are going to get him. But you did mention this squad as well. Inco being very good in the AEL. And here, not quite the case yet, but we do find that nade after all. And what else can we expect? Nothing really, as you see Lou's actually struggling right now.
Really in a tricky spot. It looked like they were really going to be in a position to gatekeep everyone, stop everyone from being able to make it in, but that's just not the case. Menor goes for a long-range spray and is actually able to connect, so that's impressive to see. Inco, though, on another side of things, have pushed over to this little wizard tower. Vitali pushes up to work with his teammates. They know there's a player downstairs, but unless Black Dragons make a push across the open street, I don't really see them making much out of this one.
Is really, really tricky. And speaking of tricky, there goes Loops. And here's the thing, like I want to go back to, that small theory that I talked about before I got cut off. You just need to know when to play loud and quiet, right, Chunks? Like if you do play too loud, but you haven't found a way to go into the circle yet, that might be not quite a smart idea, as we have ITZ here still trying to go back to prove that they are the brand that they are.
Seagod, ooh, narrowly survives that one after being absolutely cracked, but the nade follows up and, well, it's all over. Nino also starting to get aggressive now, trying to catch them from a second angle, but it just isn't working out for them, seemingly. Myth now was the final player left, tries to make a little bit of noise, but it's just not enough. And in the end, Honored Souls down in 9th position. Quick Revenge, though, do hear the shots, and they're going to start getting more and more aggressive. Nice sprays coming out, but still nothing coming of it, as Inco may be getting ready to hop out and potentially hop out of the lobby.
Look at Romuluzen like a madman. He's left them alone, but I don't care. As he chases them down, the reset may come through from that side. As we swap to the other side, Alpha 7 tries to continue with a domination as they put that pressure onto Quick Revenge, and they will continue to do so.
Rival's still there. Does he even know about the player laying prone behind? Seemingly not. That nade is dead on, but in the end, it's actually going to not be worth much because Inco should be able to find themselves the revive onto that one. Sorry, Alpha 7, knowing that there is going to be a player down here. Vito, Keed have been spotted, but still nothing yet there. Carrillo spraying through the grass for everything it's worth. You think he'd at least get a hit marker out of it.
Well, close, but not quite. And I realized they were trying to, take two fights at the same time, Chunks, and they managed to do it, but now they've only got that 10 seconds to reset and to make it into circle. I wonder if they've got any info yet, but that circle is not kind to any other team except one.
GTM still trying to stay in it, but it's going to be a tricky one, isn't it? There's an absolute red zone falling down on you right now from Black Dragons, but I'll be honest, they've conceded a little bit of damage themselves. Black Dragons obviously being kind of in a valley right now, it does make it a little bit easier for those nades to land close and start tanking through the damage. In the end, though, it's INF that steal away the knock, and Black Dragons more than happy to, get the point out of it away.
Yeah, but one step too slow, maybe. As you can see, during all of that chaos, we've already seen Influence Rage making their way in, but now 2 in the car trying to chase that down. But on the other side is Alpha 7, who tries to punish the early enter from the side of the Influence Rage. But that will mean that they have a lot of pressure, but everywhere there's shots going.
Right now, Black Dragons only talent left up. There's not really anything else that can come out of that squad, it feels like, unless he somehow manages to avoid detection and sneak in. Alpha 7, though, maybe the opposite being said. 3 players strong, 7 eliminations, and still looking to add to that. You see them just pre-firing every little ridge to try and find something. But this is what they needed to be concerned about. There's still a player up top, and he's been able to find himself a bit of an opening. In the end, though, Alpha 7 are not giving up. Law takes down 1. But still at the top of the hill, all it's going to take is 1 or 2 frag grenades, and Alpha 7 are out of it.
Yeah, and that is Law being very smart to say, that's it, I have to pull back. And you know what? They've already got 10 points, 10 eliminations, and then still 2 ongoing. And that's going to be what we thought that they would do. And they did not have a good circle, to be fair. They had to fight through it, but they found their way. So Influence Rage as well, doing extremely well.
Alpha 7 held up into a bit of a corner. Talents could potentially strike here. He may be a solo, but if he wants to work alongside Influence Rage and get himself a fairly easy second place, maybe a couple of elimination points, then this will probably be the way to do it. He has to be careful. Obviously, Kazagi still looking out round the side just in case, but I mean, I don't think they're super focused. I think they have to maybe realize that Alpha 7 have a bit of a player advantage, and there is just going to be a solo somewhere else to take into account.
This is the thing, the solo is out of the circle, but they can put a lot of work in, these solos, to really disrupt the fight of a 2v3 on the other side between Influenced Rage and Alpha 7. So that is one thing for sure. Because if I'm that guy, if I'm that solo, I would do so much disruption, but here comes the move in. Kayovsky finding that nade. Seems like he knows where Revel is. Not quite the case at the moment.
Black Dragons now finally sending that player around, but it might be a little bit too late as Influence Rage start to swing up above. Talents is there to open up, and sure, he's got an elimination point out of it. That makes 5 for the team right now. If he can just outlast one of these other squads, it'll stack up a couple more, but as Talent starts to move through, I think Black Dragons are maybe going to meet their match in the form of a 3-man of Alpha 7. He's doing what he can to sneak up without being noticed, has the M4 in hand, peeks up over, nicely done to find the damage, but unfortunately a bit wide on the spray right there, not going to be able to connect. Carrillo comes up and happy to the job. Alpha 7, 10 eliminations, potentially a chicken dinner to go alongside it. One more bullet will do it, and there it is. Alpha 7, a decent number of eliminations, a chicken dinner to go alongside, securing themselves that first place further and further.
Continuing to hold on to that throw, Brazil. And here's the thing, like, I'm happy to see the way that they were, and they were very decisive, to be fair. Like, they did not have a spot, they were in a tricky place, right? It's like you can't go left, you can't go right, you have to go through, and they found the right time to do it. And after all, they do ramp up those points, and that is the most important thing.
Yeah, really impressive to see right there. A lot of signs of life throughout that game, though, from a lot of the middle of the pack teams. We touched on Black Dragons a few times. They made it to the end game there, down to just one player left up. Do you think that maybe if they played a slightly different position, maybe didn't go for such an open hillside, we would have seen a different result? Maybe if they'd tried to backfill into Alpha 7, for instance.
Maybe, I'd say maybe, but sometimes for some certain circles, you have to risk maybe 3 members to keep one alive. So we have to go back, and they for sure have to go back and find out what happened. But that was an amazing game 1.
Absolutely, it was. Game 1 is down. We're going to be back in just a couple minutes with game number 2. I believe we're switching over to Miramar next. So if you like the desert map, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few.
e corre pra lutear. Faz o ruchão do imba e acorda pra matar. Descarregando pente no frente, tu foi solado. Distribuindo kill, a vitória pro nosso lado.
Mapa na tela, avião voando!
Welcome back, everybody, to PMPL Brazil. My name is Chunk. I am joined by the one and only Professor Tarzan. Look, we came in tonight knowing what the standings were looking like, knowing Alpha 7 were doing well. Were we expecting a chicken dinner off the bat, though?
I think so. I want to say yes, because I speak very highly of them. So they need to continue, though. We did say, like, going into a different map, very like a different beast, and we didn't have too much data to work with, Chang. So I hope they can find a way to maybe take down some of these teams early on.
Here is hoping. An interesting endgame, I think it's fair to say. It almost feels like both teams forgot that talents even existed. It felt like Influence Rage maybe should have had a better read on that, but they didn't have to worry when Alpha 7 were the ones to be able to clean him up. Do you think that maybe that unknown factor in the form of that final Black Dragons player was part of Alpha 7's win? Maybe Influence Rage were a little bit distracted?
Potentially. I feel like the solo curve played it slightly different. So there's sometimes you know how much time you've got. Maybe you have 2-3 minutes and you just need to tank it a little bit and to enter and cause some disruption when people least expect it. So there could be the difference there. But of course, you have to always have your eyes on the kill feed, right? So if you have that, then you can better establish who's where and how many players are still in each squad.
Yeah, talking about the players, though, let's have a look at who really shone that game. And I think it's fair to say Influence Rage are going to be pretty happy about their result, having a player in a Integrees.
Well, I mean, we talked about 1,000 damage per team, per game. That's a good average. But KFC says, no, I'm going to do it all by myself, leading the damage chart as well as the kill count.
Yeah, really impressive to see. Confident performances coming out from a lot of people, and I will say able to see players put up those individual numbers is great, but I like seeing it even more when you maybe have two players in the top elims category. It shows that they're working together, especially if they're also in the top assist category.
Oh, of course. And I feel like teams are still trying to warm up. And after all, this format means that they have such a long break. So coming back in, it's also about, you know, you've been talking about a plan all week. And because you are so focused on that, sometimes it makes you even more anxious to see whether you can actually implement it. And we saw some very weird rotations earlier on. We're not quite understand some of the rotation southern side, but some of these top teams you can see still quite in form.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the standings for that match and see exactly how they stack up. And I think it's fair to say we're not super surprised by the top maybe two teams. I think it's a little bit more surprising when we see teams like Black Dragons getting up there. But I think it does speak for a lot when you see they got 5 eliminations that match and maybe not too many points out of it.
Yeah, but to be fair, like, I'd be happy if I were them. We would track how it was so far in the PMPL Brazil. We'll take this for sure. And you know who else should take this? Ground Zero. I know I've been talking about them quite a lot, but as a team who has been not been invited back and missing the first week, this is a good change. And they got to the mid pack once again. So I'd like to root for these almost dark horses, if I do say so.
Yeah, I think Dark Horses are really going to show down at the bottom half of the leaderboard. Let's take a look over at that after that game, because obviously that's only the top 8 teams from that match. The bottom 8, it looks a whole lot different, doesn't it, in terms of how everyone did, because a lot of the teams yet to be able to really start stacking any points this week.
Yeah, and to be fair, it comes down to style, like we said, and the Rise Esports really showed something very exceptional. Yes, they only got those 2 points, but in my experience of watching so many teams play, you don't really see so much of how they've done it. They've lost one player and they said, we're going to take this fight. And did that decently well if it weren't for Alpha 7 being on the backside to add that pressure. So Rise, I think, is still one of the teams to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look over this game's MVP, see who really shone, and I don't think it's any surprise there seeing him in both the, I believe it was top damage and the top elimination stat.
You know what? Like, it's the efficiency as well. Look at the healing, 113. That's less than 2 first aids, mate. Like, that is insane. Like, he found the best spot and he striked, and he did not get punished. So Influence Rage, like in that game, man, I know they didn't take it after all, but they know how to get the most out of almost nothing in this one. A lot of bullets, of course, but amazing performance by Kioski.
Absolutely, really impressive to watch. I also really like the fact that maybe he didn't get too many knockouts, but he was very efficient with actually converting them over into the points. Let's take a look, though, over at the overall standings for the entire league, how the points stack up, because Alpha 7, sure, they had themselves a really impressive start, but there's still quite a ways to go in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, just the thing, if you give them the start like this, can they carry experience? Both a hard yes and a hard no is weird, chance. I've seen them play in PMPL Brazil before PMGC last season. They keep getting these chicken dinners, and just week after week, they always get these, so much money from those wins. But sometimes they do that one day, they come drop off. It's so hard to track this team. I do not
you need
understand.
to be able to stack that up consistently.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see if they are able to, though, as we move forward. 5 minutes till our next match, so let's maybe talk about Miramar a lot now. What do you expect here when we take a look over at the overall standings? The kind of bottom half of things right now, you can see a little bit of movement, though, down at the bottom of the standings. GZM Esports are able to move up a place, actually knocking down 2 teams.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Flamengo should be the team to watch, because they were last week and they know they're joining them now, and they do not have that buffer that they want. So whether they can use this as a bit of pressure to propel themselves back up, shouldn't say back, but up, because they've never been up, but that will be the question to ask. And they've been a bit quiet so far, so yeah, they need to really hold it in there.
Absolutely, they do. Going over to Miramar, though, how much of an effect do you feel like that's going to have on some of these teams? Do you think it is going to be a big deal, or do you think it's just going to be business as usual? We've had this map for a while. Everyone should kind of know it should just be just like Erangel, right?
Yes and no. I've liked this answer, but here's the thing. Of course, we didn't have, grass. We didn't have, a lot of things that can keep you safe from after initial small mistake. It's so many, open hills and all that stuff. So there's a different style, and sometimes you would look like an idiot sometimes driving past a certain segment. So this is where the studying comes in very important as well. I personally like to, divide the map into 4 segments. Your top right, top left, bottom right, and to explore the dynamics of teams like within that segment. So studying coming in very important, and the key choke points as well with some classical spots.
Absolutely. I do wonder, which teams are really going to be able to get those classic spots that we are used to seeing big performances out of. Do you think it is going to be a team just going in feeling confident? Because if we go back to the very beginning of the game, I think it was like our first engagement. It was, I believe, Loops versus someone else. And then, no, it was Rise versus somebody. And then when the fight was kind of drawing to a close, Alpha 7 just swept in, completely took the compound, and we're like, you know what? We don't like this compound anymore. Let's go for the hill and pressure more teams off.
Yeah, they are one of those teams that would just get turned on by a potential third party. So here's the thing, replying to your previous question, I feel like there will be some of these teams that have not been quite fleshy yet, but they will try to take these classical spots, but maybe failing to hold them down and use them efficiently. So that is my expectation. Maybe around that Saint Martin Plateau would be one of my favorites. Very hard to play. You need to study how another team likes to hold and split around it. So yes, extremely excited to see.
Yeah, once again though, look, we have one Miramar game this evening. I think that kind of opens hot drops up a lot, obviously with new teams coming into the lobby. Do you think that's a probability or just a possibility tonight? With so many new teams coming in, only one map, it's not really going to give teams much of an opportunity to kind of change strategies. It is very much, let's go for game number one. Let's go for the first game on Miramar and hope it goes well. You can't really adjust stuff after that point.
Yeah, only game of Miramar today. You know what? I do love to see some hot drop. I'm usually not that type of guy, Charles, but I want to see it today. I want it to be a probability and not a possibility. Just punch the team that seems to crumble under that pressure and just give them a surprise.
So what I'm hearing is I'm a bad influence, but I'll take it. Look, that's what all my friends say as well. Let's take a look, though, as we head over to the desert terrain of Miramar. Beautiful map with it's kind of polar opposites, isn't it? Whereas a Wrangle, it feels like it is very much, sure, you'll get maybe a city fight every now and then, but most of the time it tends to be ridge fights, open space for the end game. I feel like Miramar is just a Wrangle kind of cranked to the extremes in terms of the hills, the open areas, but when you get into a city, it's near impossible to take a fight cleanly.
Oh, yes, extremely hard. And I think with Miramar as well, because there's so many weird split compounds that even when you do research, it's so hard to give it a name. So, like, if a team likes to do these weird splits, they can punish you in so many ways. So, like, after all, it's about having that adjustment, knowing the basics of the game, know how far the render distances are with, car sounds and visuals, and then you just play from there.
Yeah, making the most out of everything you can. We are taking a little bit of time to get into Miramar. Apologies about that one, but the game is coming up in just a couple seconds. We spoke about it on a Wrangle. I want to know now, what's one of your favorite circles? What are you keeping your fingers crossed for? Because we've only got one Miramar, so if you're going to predict one, it better be a good one. It does look like, unfortunately, Professor Tarzan's internet has cut out, so apologies for that. But I'll tell you what, I want to see one of those island circles. I don't care which island, whether it's over on the east, whether it's down to the south. I really don't care, as long as it goes somewhere. Tarzan, I got to ask you, dude, if you have to pick one spot, now I believe that you're back. What are you thinking? If you had to pick one circle, what is it? Or maybe not. Maybe he isn't back after all. Maybe it is just the Chunk Show for a little bit. He's back. There he is.
Apologies, everybody, but I did hear his question, and I have a very good answer. Give me those small islands in the bottom right. I've had that once in my life. I've had that once in one tournament, and like since then, nothing matches that, right? So let this be the night in my debut with Chunks for us to have those small island finishes on here on this Desert Dunes.
You know, I got the chance to cast one of those circles, so it would be an honor to get to do it tonight. They're so rare, aren't they? But when you finally see them, you can kind of, it doesn't matter where you are, you can hear the players kind of like, oh, here we go again. And but for us, we just get hyped up. I'm excited for the day I finally get to cover. Look, if that is a possibility, I'll take an Oasis ending. I'll take a Minas ending. As long as the players have to struggle.
It will be on social media for sure, right? But not today. I think, like, we like those things because we are terrible people. We want to see like 20, 30 players swimming. I really doubt that you can get a decent boat there as well. But no, we will pull back to more the Montenuevo side, where, to be fair, the majority of teams have found a place in there at the moment. So it will be about within the circle adjustments, really down to their style, because we do know some teams who will feel like, wow, we have a spot in the circle now, we're good. But we also know a different caliber of team, I think, the better caliber to say, well, we need to adjust anyway. Within every circle, we do have a spot, but always finding the best spot and always finding some actions or even some points.
Yeah, but Island Circle, it feels like how many spots really are there? I feel like it's just one of those cases of getting in there early, but unfortunately, no Island Circle this time around, but still a lot of interesting spots that could end up being played. We got Monte Nuevo still in it, we got Chumacera, we got all those open hillsides, potentially even up to Power Grid right now. Taking a look over at the overall ranking, though, it is impressive to see just how far Alpha 7 have managed to stretch their lead after that previous game.
Basically a 2-game buffer, right? You need a team to win 2 chicken dinners with some kills to come back. So Alpha 7, given like how they have been in the past, maybe they will continue to dominate. But you know what? We have seen too many chicken dinners from them last season. That is almost too hard to match right now. We've got experience coming through from a lot of these teams. But here right now, they have to focus on this game. And I do want to talk about this a little bit more, Chunks. La Drillera might be my favorite spot.
It's an interesting spot. What is it that makes it such a nice spot for you? I gotta ask, because I'm not really too fussed on it personally.
I'll tell you what, because it's hard to. You can rotate, across the 2 valleys if you have a decent split. So you can do a huge 1-2-1 maybe, but it has got layers from north to south. You can have certain segments controlled, or you can just pull back a little bit. So there are ways to play around it and to outplay, but you really need to know every dips and every rock.
Absolutely. And map knowledge, it feels like, is such a big thing, especially here on Miramar. It feels like it's maybe not as much of a big deal on Erangel. Everyone kind of has that under wraps, and it feels like you can be a lot more flexible with how you want to rotate on Erangel, even when it comes to those kind of micro fights. But here on Miramar, it's kind of a different story, isn't it? If you get into an engagement and you don't know the terrain, you're going to be maybe even running down a completely open hillside trying to back away from it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those maps where they reward you even more when it comes to the game plan of choking certain people's rotations, right? So the to shoot or not to shoot question is very hard to answer. And sometimes you just really need that trigger discipline to say, not yet, not yet. We'll let them come into this area where they can't reset. That's when we fight. But speaking of fighting, seems like Rise can't catch a break, whether they initiate it or being shot upon. But INTZ says, no, not quite yet. And Neptos will pull back a little bit to his teammate.
Yeah, unfortunate. Ints there, though, going to be pretty happy about that one, able to get themselves an Oxshore. They're not converting it over into points just yet, but doing damage, pressuring what was ostensibly a 4v1 fight, being able to do a little bit of damage, then back away has to be a bit of a confidence boost. And look, it's going to boost that ADR stat. It's going to put you up there a bit more for the MVP, so I like it. Just take some shots. Who needs trigger discipline?
I really like how he's being the bad influence right now. I've been spending so much time stopping players from being stupid. But you know what? Chunk is right. If you can land it, and if you have the style to always be able to capitalize, then go for it, right? Go for it. Do your damage, chip down the armor and the helmet, and then just come back and kill them another time.
All I'm going to say, all right, is if you're good enough to be in the PMPL, you're good enough to get a squad wipe. Am I wrong?
Okay, you know what? I'm going to give it to you. Yes. Yeah. You know what? Yes. I feel like that is actually true. Like, I've been trying to be extremely harsh, I feel like, through the past competitive year. But no, they have experienced a lot of success as a team, to be fair. They know how to take quite a lot of wins, and they must have clean wipes before, and so that's something that they could use. As you can see, Mufasa said, haha, no longer being the first person dead this time round, so he'll find some grass to lay into his comfort. Letting that one go, though.
Yeah, he's just kind of waiting. I don't think he was expecting this squad to actually pull up into the city. I think that maybe the strategy was going to be, hey, let's lay down and wait for them to move. But now that isn't exactly working out. You can see 2 players posting up in buildings. And then at distance, if you saw that, the rest of the squad are now hopping into vehicles and making a move. So I think Mufasa might be stuck here for a little bit, if I'm honest.
Yeah, but I think he's also smart. I feel like he's giving info and not giving away audio cues. So for that, I respect him. And it seems like he passed over enough info. It could have been a knock. Unfortunately, his teammates suck and didn't take that knock. Otherwise, Mufasa could have done more. Haha. But you know what? Like, that is a huge city after all, St. Martin. You can make a lot of things work. Maybe they've waited for too long, but it's about finding the right fight and making it clean.
Mufasa just kind of waiting now, hoping that he isn't spotted. Maybe if he does find a straggler, though, it'll be a different story. He does kind of have an advantage in the form of Mythic up top, looking down, making sure that there isn't really anyone who could sneak up on him. Surprise, but you know what? Rafinha just taking a couple long-range shots, but nothing coming of it yet. I think Rise are going to be pretty happy. They've stayed as a 4-man. And that player down in the city has just survived.
Yeah, and it's a good escape. Like, the only thing is they knew that they don't have enough vehicles. And this is the problem. You need quite a lot of vehicles, ideally 1 per person, like for this type of map. So if one gets sprays down and then you do a quick pickup of your teammate and then you continue. Like, otherwise, it's going to be a nasty explosion, right? And I'm a bit scared just watching this. 3 in the car, and they were lucky to have found that buggy, but the rest have gone into the hands of Rise, seems like.
GZM now just going to be starting to rotate through slowly but surely. I think that's going to be the team for the I think that's going to be the theme for the majority of these teams, isn't it? No one really going to push in super aggressive early, just kind of treading water, it feels like, to a certain extent, just making sure that everything's all right, just checking everything out, making sure it's clean. But other than that, I don't think really too much happening. GZM just taking this compound relatively easily. They shouldn't have any opposition in this area.
Boy, and I do love this shift. It continues to go to that western side, and you know what? It bring me back to one of the games in the group stage of PMGC West, where we actually have 1 or 2 squads having a huge game around this almost unplayable area and have a huge chicken dinner and send themselves in. So of course, small things do stack up, but sometimes a timely, huge game is what's needed to not just get yourself qualified, but with that huge confidence boost. Like we said, Loop's trying to chase down another team right now. Quick revenge. Would that be an easy one? I don't think so. Chief, as he pulls back just in time.
Tally just tapping away with the M16. Inco definitely trying to make themselves some noise, but they are a little bit split. They've got to be a little careful as Ints start to rotate round to the north. It's about finding that balance, isn't it, of making noise, taking shots, and showing that you're strong without exposing yourself to the point where you get a player knocked and the team is able to capitalize.
Absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes, like, I saw Golden right there for Inco, and a bit of backstory, Trunks. He used to be part of the Loops team in 2020 PMGC, and at that time, the key members have now moved on to Influence Rage. So, you know, maybe they shared synergies in the past enough for them to find each other's playstyle to exploit and to punish. So, like, that is the brilliance, right? Like, when it comes to having this type of scene, like, with almost a stable player base, they keep learning from each other, but also have friendly rivalries.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing, isn't it? Having that sense of community and competition while also still being able to get along and not really have the drama that comes along sometimes with competition. So I think it's good, isn't it? You get the best players in the world. They're going to, you know, have at least a bit in common, it feels like. So it's good that they all get along. And if they are maybe competing against each other on different rosters.
Absolutely. I think this is the hard thing, to be fair, for this competitive year. Like, when I saw it, I was like, oh dear. Because especially for, let's say, NA teams, like you've seen how it's like on the AEL, like there's a power difference. Sometimes you do have to wonder, was it longevity of the teams, like ability to resolve conflicts and stuff like that? It's a tough topic. It's extremely hard. It's beyond skills, and we know it, Chance. Like, you have the experience of casting, multiple teams on different platforms as well. And what do you think makes a great team, like outside of skills?
I think the biggest thing that I talk about a lot is controlled aggression. Be it, for instance, in a situation like this, send GZM over, get aggressive, keep Vivo keyed heads down, and then get that player out of there. And also don't be afraid to back off from a fight. So if you are in a disadvantaged position and you are taking a fight against the team and there is a way out of it, don't be afraid to take that way, to back up, to re-heal, make sure you keep all your players up, get some revives, and then go back in for the fight. When maybe you see one of their names knocked in the elimination feed, it makes it a little bit easier, then you can mount that attack. So I think, honestly, it just comes down to awareness and controlled aggression.
Oh, absolutely right. And when you look at the circle like this, look at Alpha 7. They said, hallelujah, we are going to control 70% of the circle with our 4x1 split. And this is exactly what they're trying to do now. But other sides, we have 40 seconds left before Honor Souls have to leave. Quick revenge here. Can it be a quick one? Because that's not a lot of time.
You can see now Honored Souls doing everything they can to hold on to it. I mean, this is it, controlled aggression, isn't it? If I was in a situation like this, you need to try off. This is a prime example. It looks like, though, Honored Souls are going to be getting pushed as the nade is going to come out from the players from Honored Souls. It doesn't quite connect, and there it is. That's the discipline. Get in the back away. Don't take the fight. Just get to safety. You're so far away from the zone right now.
Yeah, I quite like the way that GC got buying time for his squad. Like, he's keeping, the nades and all that stuff, keeping them there as the rest of the team both get a wide angle as well as scouting towards the center. So I do like the method there, but seems like he's been found is not going to be quite easy right there. But they do find the edge, and here comes quick revenge.
Honor Souls now just going to be losing a player, but still having someone off to the side. The Mini 14 with an 8x could be kind of a game changer, but it doesn't look like it's really going to be any use as players get down the other side of the hill. Seagod is really kind of in no man's land right now. You can see them starting to work around a bit of an off angle onto him, and if they are able to get that, there's no way of him getting out of this position. He's just going to be trapped. It all comes down to Nino putting in fire, applying pressure, and giving his teammate a bit of space.
Chunks, speaking of trapped, I feel like it might not be just one team or one player. Maybe both teams are trapped. If we track back towards the circle, the closest solid building that they're going to have is going to be inside Monte Nuevo. So the blue zone is closing. What grounds do they have to use? That would be my worry right now. As you can see, they're running now almost like they didn't know it's coming, but they played this game long enough to know that's something that they need to care about.
GZM Esports now just laying prone. This is the place where you want to see nade used, isn't it? When there's a full squad just over a hill that you could potentially punish, if you can throw 5-6 frag grenades over as a team, you're almost guaranteed to find a knock out of it, and then you can just push over and get aggressive. Now, though, up on top, quick revenge trying to hold out, and it looks like they're going to have relative success with that. Pretty easy cleanup, and quick revenge should now start a quick rotation into zone.
Exactly. I mean, enough is enough, right? Like, and that was the brilliant time to do that. Inco, though, on that same side of the edge coming in. Golden takes it with that one, and quick maneuver in still, just tanking that little bit to the sliver of his health.
Inco trying to survive as the spray comes through the smoke. They could be in some serious trouble right now. Becca's going to be going out of it, though, as Inco do start to take some serious casualties. It is down to this solo really make something happen. It doesn't look like he's really got util to work with. Tries to spray through the smoke. Nothing is connecting. Ends up throwing down one of his own, and I think that really is a last-ditch effort. I'm not sure what more Inco can do here with a solo and a dip and a team behind you.
Man, and we've found the shift actually. It's going to be a Monte Nuevo finish that I haven't seen it in a while. So we have the bottom bit, but also the top part. But the side of Ground Zero said, Influence Rage, you've been rest too comfortable. You want to come back and take the throne from the side of Alpha 7. Not quite easy. Don't forget about our bottom teams as they find an edge to enter from.
Black Dragons will be going down, not really surprising considering their position very wide open with only one player left, but it is a little bit surprising still see 14 teams now alive as Inco fall, especially in a circle like this. It feels like it is going to be one of those where one or two teams that got in early will be able to hold as a squad, and everyone else is really just going to be rotating, losing one or two players on the rotation. It's going to be brutal for them.
Very brutal circle, I have to say. Let's play a game, Chunks. Like 48 players alive. How many do you think will be still alive after this completely closed?
I'm gonna go like, there's the hills up to the north. Israel's kind of already clustered in. I'm gonna say
might be
like,
one.
Let's say high 30s, but the zone after that, I think, is where we're really gonna see a lot of players fall.
Yeah, I'm going to pick 42. I just feel like they might be able to, for some reason, and you can see Alpha 7 being very vigilant when it comes to rotating around it, or they're just trying to hunt down a team that wants to share that northern edge. But we can see mostly southern teams in Monte Nuevo in the north and still finding some dips to hold.
It is just a bit of a waiting game. Flamengo Esports, a team that did go out very early last game, now currently making it into the top 13, but it's not going to be easy. You can see them taking shots over towards Vivo Key. So now they have to start to move their way back. Flag play comes around the side and is going to be able to shut things down. Vivo Keyed out in 13th position, not ideal for them whatsoever. But Alpha 7, having arguably one of the stronger compounds in a circle like this, they've got to be feeling good about themselves now.
Man, like that's what's needed. They only got 33 points from 3 days last week, so that is something to really change. But Influence Rates want to hold it down. Federal will command that one. A 1-piece, a 2-piece, a 3-piece coming through. Where is the last one he is asking?
Looking out, the smokes just about provide enough cover for Federal to not be able to find the enemies, as now Ravo gets a nade of his own ready. Is it going to be necked? It does a little bit of damage, not really there for the flush just yet as Revo starts moving up a little bit further. I think they have the read. There's going to be a player up over the top. He's just laying prone. He's waiting. He's using that TPP to advantage. Can you blame him? Absolutely not, but it's just not enough. When you take a peek against Alpha 7, just expect to get your head taken off.
Man, that is so nice to see. They know exactly what needs to be done. If they go more center, they can be pinched from all around. So they need to find surrounding high ground to first clear it now. Out now, we have once again. Man, Chunks, this is so tough. This is so harsh. We shift away from Monte Nuevo, and Alpha 7 gets the luxury to first pick some spots on that northern side again. Yeah,
it's a luxury that very few teams actually get, so they're going to be pretty happy about it. And obviously now, every team has to move out. I think we were pretty good on the reads. I guess we're pretty smart analysts after all, because we're in the high 30s. As soon as that circle popped, kind of a different story. Everyone is starting to crumble now.
Man, like this is going to be extremely interesting. The entering time will be so vital, and how you put certain players to just play a role and potentially give his life up for the bigger cause will be the key thing here. As we see Flamengo still quite pinched in here. Duck would say you stay right in there, and he goes quack. They will be still clumped in that building, not able to enter.
Now GZM just kind of have to wait. They're just about inside. They can pray for another shift in their direction, but they are going to have to cross that road sooner or later. Papa Kill, though, going to be opening up. Finds the knock initially, is going to be able to flush that one out. Sees the rest of F4 move in, but unfortunately gets spotted from behind. Going to be forced back in to the shack for now, as now Flamengo finally start to get aggressive themselves. Loop's doing what they can to go for the revive, and Flamengo seemingly unaware. The smokes have kind of saved Loops here.
Yeah, they can just wait for it. As you can see, the patience is there, but after the angles are not quite in their favor. Lining up that one, but Brazilian killers. We talk about them having struggles in the past, but they are still in here, and they found some comfort on that western side to share it with someone, and they will be the kings of the West.
Duck still trying his best to spray through, but it's such a slim angle. It's going to be burning through a lot of ammo to really connect with anything. Saw a little bit of movement, too little, too late, gets behind the wall. As the nade comes out, that might just be enough. Yes, it is. Duck still there, doing his best to third party through. As Toyko now starts to get involved, he is going to be the last player really in this fight for Loops. Flamengo just going to be holding steadfast, but as the nades start to come through, that might just be enough to connect. It does the damage, but he is going to be on the outside wall, so it's not quite connected in the end. It's going to be Fogwards in, I think is how you pronounce it, that's able to finish off the job. 7 teams still left. It really was accurate. Every team is starting to fall now.
I mean, look at the landscape. What else could we expect? And Flamengo, though, that is the play that they need. When you look at that kill feed and you see I killed Loops, you know that's gonna feel good. That's the team, that's the brand that we know from the scene, not just in this region, but across the world, as we have Hasten trying with the Car 98 headshot, but unfortunately, a level 3 helmet.
Not ideal right there. It's a hard strategy, isn't it, going with the bolt? And then when someone has a level 3 helmet, it just feels like it's not a good feeling. You finally get that headshot, and then they just don't come. It's I'm sure these players don't feel it as much as I do, but it takes me a lot of effort to even hit a headshot. So when they don't go down, it's pretty sad.
Extremely sad, and you just feel like, no, you just gotta pull it together. Just say, look, I got a headshot, he's just low, right? So focus on the right thing, you know, focus on the next right thing to do. Give that info there low anyway, just need an extra bullet. But you know what? Extra bullet indeed for G Exam, and it's going to be a little bit of a hard escape from Montenuevo as it's continue to shift towards the outside.
Absolutely. Smoke Esports now going to need to make themselves a bit of a move. I got to say, they are in a very promising position currently with a decent way of holding out those southern teams. Rise, though, the same cannot be said for. They've just lost Nunez. They're going to try and get the revive out as now Alpha 7, yet again, in the play zone. Heavy number of eliminations and trying to deny the vehicle.
Oh. Mafioso, though, did not use that ridgeline quite enough. Will there still be possibilities to come through? But you know what Flamengo said? We are going to continue with our momentum outside of the zone. Very close with that one, but not quite yet. And it's going to be coming short. Capjao will take that one with the flush as he continues to survive as the solo player for the squad.
Carrillo still trying to spray his way through, holding out every single squad he can. He's trying to blow up that vehicle, and, well, if he does, Rise are going to be in a very sticky situation. Now Lucas starts coming from the other side, catching them in a bit of a pinch. Rise do return the fire. They finish off GZM, blow up their own vehicle, but Mephisto is still trying to get involved right now.
Man, and you can see Alpha 7, they are not going overzealous. They're playing this position with a plan, with preparation to enter further. Flamengo knows that it's going to be hard. Leave one behind to heal. Made it to top 5. Not too bad, to be fair. It's going to be a double-digit point. I mean, that's more than a third of what they initially have. And we're down to these 4 teams with BRK in right there. And then Alpha 7 trying to get every angle possible.
There it is, the body shot. I thought that was the head. I thought it was a knock. Surely he's got a 3 helmet. That's just not fair. That's got to suck right there. Carrillo is just going to be able to get the heal off and to re-assault into the wounds will make it. I think he was popping.
That's just really, really painful to see. I'd be salty, and I feel like I have decent mentality, but you know what? It's not done yet. Like, we can see Smoke Esports still slowly getting in as they actually fall short a little bit. That doesn't help, and there's going to be Brazilian players trying to maybe get the first big game.
Definitely seems like that could be the case. Papa Kill open himself something up there to do some damage, but the rest of the squad still haven't fallen. Smoke now is 6 eliminations and remaining 3 players strong. They put themselves in a good position, but still 3 other teams to try and navigate here.
Man, we've got some top teams in here. Alpha 7 still in, and obviously, but Rise as well.
Just going to be waiting and watching. Apologies about that. It sounds like we're having some internet issues, so we're kind of talking over each other right now, but I'll just leave with it for a little bit, and I'll let you take over when the action really kicks off. Don't worry. I mean, right now, look, Smoke are doing a really good job of just holding steadfast, kind of waiting for every other squad to start eliminating each other. Rise is still creeping their way through. Papakill sees a little bit of motion, tries to make the most out of it. The nade seems to be dead on, though, to Mufasa's position. The stone's going to be closing through as well, and there it is. Down goes Mufasa, finished off with the 4x. This is what I meant about controlled aggression. You don't have to push through just to prove you're a strong team.
Yeah, and reading the building very well as well. Not going onto the open side, holding this line, but this also allows Mafioso to become a cheeky one as he's trying to land a nade. Not quite, but the thought is there. Now everyone know where he is, and it's about Smoke Esports to prevent to get taken down from that side. But here's the nade. Hayden said, I didn't have the headshots that I want with the Kar 98. Let's see whether I can do it with a frag grenade. Not quite, but good effort.
Rafinha does fall. 2 teams now remain. Smoke Esports going to try and make themselves a bit of a push here into Alpha 7. But Alpha 7 doing everything they can to try and make it a back-to-back chicken. Mafioso does manage to get the heal off, but the zone is still starting to creep its way through. Heisen throws out a nade of his own. Papakill is kind of just waiting. You got to bear in mind as well that Smoke Esports right now do have a player advantage. They've got a little bit more time to work with, but as Kills peeks out through that corner, you got to think Mafioso is just going to be there to finish off the job.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Mafioso's position is known, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed to see Smoke Esports not using that info to do more things. Right? Of course, he could crawl along that fence, but there's more to be done, I feel like, but maybe it's the threat of Carrillo, knowing that there's an extra player being there, but Mafioso is actually still there. Papakill going for that round 3, maybe.
Seems to look like it. Throws out the nade. There it is. Mafioso going to be falling. That leaves only 2 players left standing now from Smoke Esports as 1 more will follow. Carrillo's still just going to be holding the cross. Tries to go for a bit of a spray. Switches over to the UMP. Does some damage onto 1. Plays zone going to be closing through, but it's not enough, and it's Smoke Esports that get themselves that all-important chicken dinner, and even more importantly, denying Alpha 7 a back-to-back win.
Yeah, I mean, look at that play. Like, I think Carrillo could have made it. Smoky Esports were still a little bit, I feel like, what's the word? Jarring in the way that they approached it. It could have been a lot more smooth. And when you have practically a 3v1, they have the compounds, they have the sites, they've got the utilities, they've got the info. So I think that's a sign of a team still trying to get in the form that they can be. But Alpha 7, after all, I don't think they will be that sad after all. I mean, it's once again a huge game for them, and they can really use that. If they can't be, shut down after a few bad games, 2 decent games shouldn't either.
Yeah, very, very promising performance right there from Smoke Esports. And I'll be honest, they did kind of need it. I don't think there's any other way to put it. Coming into tonight, they were really low down in the standings. They hadn't actually played a game yet. So being able to get a 2nd place off your 2nd match, it's a pretty good sign for how things are going to go. And 1 or 2 more of those, forget about 15th, 16th. That's a top 12 performance minimum.
Yeah, and right now it's very clear what they can do, but the other teams need to do the same now, especially after some experience on that first game. We are going to go back to Erangel soon for match 3, so don't go anywhere, and we'll see you guys soon.
pra lutear. Faz o ruchão do Imba e acorda pra matar. Descarregando pente no frente, tu foi solado. Distribuindo kill, a vitória pro nosso lado.
Mapa na tela, avião voando!
Welcome back, everybody, to PMPL Brazil. 2 games in the books, but still 3 more to go, 2 of which are going to be Erangel. I think that game 1 on Erangel gave us a really good preview. Alpha 7 able to pick up that chicken dinner, which, I mean, when we looked at the actual stats for the map, Alpha 7 weren't really consistently up there, but I think that probably changed after game number 1, and especially game number 2, making it into a top 2 situation there against Smoke Esports, who honestly just kind of played flawlessly. I can't really fault anything they did.
Yeah, the entering, pace and the methods were quite clean, I have to say. And especially from a team that have not been having a good time when it comes to points and just the games in the past week or so. This is going to shake things up, and it's going to put, pressure on a team like Flamengo. But luckily, they've been having a decent game as well. They've got some, good squad vibes and stuff, and they know how to, find the balance between those macro players. And towards the end here, finally, Papa Kill will find that knock, and that starts all of it. Almost a 1v3 opportunity, Carrillo, but not quite, but really, really good effort.
There's always next time. Let's say that for the minimum. I mean, Alpha 7 consistently coming out on top. It wouldn't really surprise me too much to see them get maybe a second chicken dinner tonight, grow that lead. But look, we've reached a point now where it feels like, okay, we've seen enough of these top teams. What are we going to see out the bottom teams? I think that Smoke Esports as a team only just came in, definitely impressed that match. I mean, just look over at the overall the top stats for each of these. Papa Kill just going hard on the eliminations and on the actual shots fired.
Man, they said Kaiowski 1,000, I would take 1,100, and that is going to be a huge shakeup. And here's the thing, Chunks, like I've seen many teams play and they've got different within the team dynamics. Like sometimes, they just press a button, they have a button. Sometimes you just switch on player and they will have a really, really good effect in drawing the whole team into shape. And maybe this is what they need.
Yeah, I think that just one player picking up that pace can maybe almost force other players to start setting things up a little bit more. So it is an interesting one to see, and I'm excited to see how things move forward from this. I'm also a little bit intrigued when it comes to the standings, at how things are stacking up. Obviously, Smoke Esports doing extremely well there. 25 total points in 25 total points in that previous match, I believe. So really good to see from them.
Man, like this is going to be quite interesting, I think, because if you look at those top 6, there's at least 4 teams, like 3-4 teams that we didn't expect them to be there. And that's going to add a lot of pressure onto the teams who arguably relied on the comfort, right? Rely on that comfort that they had before. Well, okay, we made it the first week. We are middle pack. It should be okay. But no, if it's the flame within some of these teams to say we were angry that we were not there, and now they want to prove otherwise.
Yeah, I think the pressure is really on for a lot of these squads right now. Let's see if they are able to step it up. I do wonder, though. Obviously, we have a massive disparity here between maybe the top few teams and how it actually dropped. Let's take a look at how it affects the overall standings, though, and see what really changes over there. We see the bottom half, and well, it's a bit of a tricky story for some of these teams after that match, especially after teams like Loops, Black Dragons had a really promising start.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. Loops, they have not found really real consistency, like from since they've got those few players like leaving to Influence Rage, like since the incident in 2020 PMGC, they bring players in, but it's not quite the same. And I really wonder how they bounce back from these 2 games and back onto Erangel. They should know the mistakes that they made first time round, and this is where we really need them to bounce. If you just look at this page, right, Chunks, like they were the only team that we feel like shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Obviously, we got to move forward now, though. Let's forget about those leaderboards for a minute, because we should take a look over at the MVP from that match. And I don't think it's really a surprise that Papa Kill was up there, consistently making it to the end, our top eliminator from that match, number of knockouts, and being able to make it the distance and get the win.
Yeah, and this one though, like, it's going to be quite interesting, because like when you have a team like this, sometimes you feel like, oh, they were just lucky, like, getting that win. Not quite the case here, as we can see, and that will really set them apart compared to those teams who have not shown the ability to have clean or big games chance. Like, this is really, really important. Like, I found a lot of average teams would never be the worst, but will never be the best. Like, you need to see some of these teams like this to have the ability to take these from time to time, and that will be a great predictor as to how they can perform later on.
Yeah, I mean, the question now becomes, though, for a team like Smoke Esports, is it down to just that one player, or is it going to be a situation where the whole team can start really picking it up a little bit more? Because it feels like it's all well and good relying on one player, but if that player isn't on form, if he maybe slips up one match, you know, gets eliminated early, it could really change the whole setup of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at these stats once again, not quite the case though if we compare to before. It's quite similar chunks, but the healing done is a little bit more, but you know what? That's just Miramar, quite unforgiving, right, when it comes to those open grounds.
Yep, let's take a look at the overall standing and see how things are currently stacking up right now. This is the top half of the leaderboard. A lot of changes here. Loops, after having a pretty rough game, now Rise have moved up a position and they've dropped down one.
Well, this is what happens, right? Like, when you don't have the real consistency, then you can't really stay there. You also need some help, you know, from the gods of PUBG to have the circle on your side. Like, for a circle like that, it can really either go into the city or the other way around. So what can we say?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Obviously, going over to Erangel, it's a map that it feels like, I'm not sure whether it is down to the map, honestly, where the teams are just performing well on one map and then performing badly on another, but it feels like Alpha 7 have been able to get both kind of down to a T, whereas Rise struggled in game number 1 over on Erangel. In game number 2, they really came alive on Miramar.
Yeah, for sure. But right now, that's the thing though. Like, you have that hype. There's no much chance for you to use that same thing, right? We are really back onto Erangel, and seems like with so many practice, not just this split, right, from the seasons before. Sometimes the real change is when teams really want to experience a new drop spot, and I think that's really showing the growth curve of teams. Alpha 7 being very experienced, they can afford to test more things, right? But if you are just a newcomer into this pro scene chunks, that really, you know, changes your game plan. Like, you're still trying to get a grip of how you can play around things. You face two of those teams who will share similar segment, and you still need to find a way through it. So I do think that is the most interesting bit about the map rotations, being Erangel being very heavy in these days. That counts.
Yeah, let's take a look at the bottom half of the leaderboard, though, and see how that is stacking up, because it feels like it's even more interesting. GZM started off in game number 1 pretty well, but Smoke Esports getting themselves a chicken dinner in their second match, now able to just shoot themselves up the standing into 17th place. Sure, they need another 30 to move up another place, but they still have 3 more matches.
3 more matches is quite enough, you know. Like, if you can play an Alpha 7 game, chunks, that will be more than enough. You just need one of those, to be fair, and you continue from the 2 days later on. And we just need to see, like, right now, I think as we progress through these few days as well, the pacing of some of these teams in the start of rotation, maybe in the first 2 phases, will really change quite a bit. You will clash with similar teams if you know their drops, and they should. And that's what we say about the Pro League. It's all about that level of preparation, and arguably they have staff to help with that as well, analysts and coach like that. So we want to see some of these outplays on the macro perspective, I think, like, personally, other than, you know, of course, it's always nice to see a 1v2 or 3, which we almost saw 1v4 earlier. So let's see where we can get the surprise.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? When it actually takes a look over at the macro plays, how well can you really prepare when it comes to that? You know, it's hard to actually prepare for the larger game plan, so many unpredictable factors. So I think that adaptability is the main thing we have to touch on when we're talking about that. Not just necessarily going forward with one game plan, but also being aware of so many possibilities of things that could happen, ways that teams could push you, way that teams could find angles on you, and able to adapt from them. So I think that's what we're really seeing the difference being with those top squads, with maybe the squads that are a bit lower down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see here, we are having one of these almost old rivalry, like two of the brightest stars from the region, Revo and Federal. Man, I've been watching them since I was a kid, really, before I even started casting. And that's how long they've been around for. And they just continuously stay at the top. So this really shows, like, you know, through the molding of the scene, through practice, what you can do. And they're still right up their charts.
Yeah, and I gotta say, look, it's the MVP from game 1 compared with the MVP from game 2. There is a little bit of a disparity, isn't there, between Alpha 7, Revo, and Federal, but I think it's fair to say, because Alpha 7 have maybe had slightly better performances going through a few of the matches, I think that maybe they've been able to carry a bit of that momentum, be a little bit more confident from the get-go, whereas Influence Rage haven't really had that freedom, being a few places down in the standings while still being a good squad. It feels like they're maybe slowing off a little, they're starting off a little bit slower and taking a bit to get into it. So I wouldn't read into the disparity between the two players too much here.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking, right, Chunks, I feel like Influence Rage, they have a great group of players, don't get me wrong. I feel like they have continued to get slightly better in all the things that they were already strong at, but they almost haven't learned certain things that they are not quite good at. So that's the problem. Like, how much do you continue to reinforce your strengths? When do you start working on some of your weaknesses? It's almost like a repertoire, right? You're very good at this. How about the other things? And we want to see them shine in a different type of game where they're put under different types of pressure and they can still come through. And that is what I've been waiting from the squad all along. And because they were not able to do that at the end of last year, they were not able to go to the global. So that is the key learning for them here this year.
No, I think it's the balance, isn't it, of getting things started with a bang, but also not making too much of an impression that every team is looking at you as kind of the team to counter strat. So I think that's very important here, making sure that teams are prepared to the point of, okay, we need to have some backup plans that we don't necessarily bust out all the time. So I think finding that balance is going to be very important for a lot of these squads. And it's something that some of the teams have done extremely well. Smoke from game number 2 right there, prime example of it.
Yep. Smokes, I feel like there's more than just them to see, of course. Flamengo slowly coming back. I talked about it already, Chunks. Like, before even that game to start, we're so scared that they may just stay right there. And then this mentally is so hard to come back if they were still around the same, like, point per game, like with Smokes doing stuff like that. So is important, and that has changed things into a very interesting turn, and that will continue to be the case, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one no matter what. We've got about 3 minutes till on next game. It's going to be on a wrangle again. I do wonder, though, how much can teams really learn from a game like we just had, where it looked for a second like everyone was going down to Millie Island, so everyone went kind of farm area, then had to migrate back up over towards the Chinky and then start moving out of there. I do wonder how many lessons teams could have actually learned from that previous wrangle game, and how much of it is really just, you know, let's go in with a clean slate and try and react to whatever gets thrown our way.
See, let's have a quick lecture with the professor, right? I'm joking, right? I shouldn't my own horn. But I want to talk about one thing with key spots here. With exactly like you said, for shifts like that, there are strong spots that are very conditional. You can overcommit, but then makes leaving extremely hard. With the experience in the scene, teams like Alpha 7 should know there are spots that are not quite strong yet, but leaves options open. And this is where teams need to really get into that mentality to really study and sometimes just drive around through a custom room to find these spots and keep hypothesizing different splits and stuff like that. We have seen teams just now getting punished because they went for classical positions. They're very good if the circle keeps going to them, but if it shifts away, it's going to put them in danger, right? So these are how we appraise teams sometimes, Chunks, and I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we will continue to do that as we return to Erangel, and once again, hoping for those bridge finishes.
Yeah, I want to see us end down at a bridge or something somewhere. Look, let's hop into our map. It's going to be Erangel, game number 3 of the evening. Second to last Erangel. Sandhawk coming up next, though. Do you think this is maybe a chance for teams to start warming up and think, you know what, let's start sending it early. Let's get aggressive, get ready for some scrappy jungle fights.
Let's do it. I mean, there's no excuse, right? How dare they say they've only warmed up now? We've only got 5 matches, man. 2 maps to get warmed up. A little bit too late, mate. And I think this is time to really, really go. There's no more excuse. They've been in this long enough. If not, you need to learn those skills to get yourself ready right on the get-go as we go through beautiful hills of Erangel onto that western bridge right here and back to that garage or gas station, we call it, and all the way back to wherever this is, and then we will have a very nice one through their therapy. What a beautiful map. What a time to be alive, right? On a mobile phone, Chunks. We never thought it would be possible to play at this level.
No, we never really did, but I mean, these teams are absolutely proving that it is possible, and they are absolutely slaying doing so. I mean, there's a lot of kind of unknowns coming into this. Obviously, we still have so many new teams we haven't really got to see much, but I think going forward, we get to see more of those teams, get to see just what exactly they're capable of, and maybe see a couple of those squads start to stack up those points, because there are some formidable names in those rosters that, sure, they didn't get to play last week, but now they're here and they're ready to come out the gate swinging.
Yeah, and speaking of those names, like, we have seen, you know, characters being developed or showing more of the character through the test of time. You are a big name. Are you the type who would get too overly, you know, inflated in, you know, confidence and all that stuff? Or you are the type that can use that well to keep developing? We've seen both. A lot of both, to be fair, like through the history of this game. But Playing Path is out is even worse than the last one, Chunks. Even more southern. We draw that line again. Maybe Gatka to shelter everything else. More than half of the map is going to be hard to reach. And for the other half, that's slightly easier. 50% of it is water.
I hope that we do get that melee circle. It feels like we've been baited by it once before, and it ended up going up towards Pachinki, which, you know what, I'm not complaining about. That's a pretty good end. But I want to see it. I don't think I've actually had the chance to cast any PUBG Mobile where we've ended up over on Billy Island just yet. So I'm excited for that one.
Leaving a lot to be desired, Jungs. It will happen, and I believe when that day happens, I hope it's going to be today, by the way, you will have loads of fun as we see, once again, slightly more congestion towards that eastern side. And you know what? I'm looking at Influence Rage's drop spot. Let's talk about some cities, right? Like Primosk, not an easy one to pull off. I've seen a lot of Primosk team that actually not perform too well, because if teams really want to punish them, there are multiple ways, and you're just forced to like drive a boat, swim, or we call it a boatation. But you know what? We will likely to be left a little bit heartbroken as we have the circle going back to the mainlands with around Ruins, Pachinki in the middle here.
I'm crying now. I'm so upset. I wanted to see that melee circle so bad, and the plane, it just baited us. I'm in shambles. I'm so sad. What is going on? How could the game bait me like this? It's almost like the circles are random. Yeah,
you know what? Like, the players are probably complaining as well. But you know what? That tests one skill in particular. It's about knowing some other team's drop spot and knowing where car spawns are, so that might be the first fight that we get to see. I mean, there's no stranger, like, for anyone here. Like, everyone knows that we have occasionally some fights around, like, punching around cars, driving people around, trying to shoot someone down with a pistol, as we see Matodo saying, no, I found one. We know the plateau to the north of farm. There is one. And Alpha 7 likes their eastern control, and they are going to go on the outskirts of Milta Power and start moving back to around the Lepovka area.
Yeah, Alpha 7 immediately making a move just to loot up and start moving. I do wonder whether this is going to work out for them. It looks like they're probably going to be one of those teams that prefers to swing in from the northern side and work their way through. But obviously, Gatka being such an open area, I'm not sure how teams are going to want to play that, whether we're going to see a lot of teams move there early or whether maybe it is going to be one of those games where everyone just kind of waits unless the circle ends up going there.
Like, we will establish more of the feel of how a team plays, and same for these teams, so they know how to go against someone around the segment. For example, you should know, like, if you've done your homework, like everyone in this game, who will go where for a particular circle, right? You know where they drop, you know what compounds they like, you know what shift happened. You can actually draw quite a lot of predictions that can usually be quite right. And Gatka, so we'll keep an eye on there, especially with those chopsticks there, leaving things very, very interesting. One of those spots, like I said, if we relay back to my point earlier, Chunks, is you don't want to take them early. If you've been very, very loud around the chopsticks, whatever shifts away, boom, it's going to be a hard one.
Absolutely. I think the important thing when it comes to something like chopsticks is confident enough to hold it, make some noise, have players not necessarily in them, but down at the ends of them where you're able to peek out and get aggressive, but also being able to react quickly. If you get crashed by 3 vehicles in those chopsticks, you have to be able to respond. You have to have those clean comms, and you can't really have put yourself in a position where there's 3 teams close by all shooting at you.
Yep.
You have to yet again find that balance. It's controlled aggression, isn't it? Causing enough noise to make somebody look your way without approaching.
Yeah, controlled aggression indeed. As we look at the minimap on that top right, BRK, they had once thought of aggression earlier in that previous game, Chunks. They rotated all around with an anti-clockwise rotation around Novo and the Eastern Bridge, and then they clash with the side of GXM. And it's like, what is going on? What are they thinking? But good thinking. This is controlled aggression back into this game. Say, nope, we're not going to bother with that. We will be the first team to rotate. So they crossed that bridge quite early on this time, found themselves a compound. I hope they do have the loot. But this is a good change. I like the effort there, Chunks.
Absolutely. It's impressive to see a little bit of a switch up, not going with the same strategy every time. It shows maybe the more experienced teams that have confident change in strategies. They really feel concerned about how things are going. I think it is a really promising sign. Inco are a team that have been very hit or miss, but judging from their position inside zone right now, I hope that they're going to be able to move forward in big things, because they are in a really good position where they should be able to loot up without any real problems.
Yeah, but you can see very interesting in their position right now. 2-1-1, 2 going so far outside Pachinki to, take vehicles. We really need those resources, but that means that they really feel, comfortable around there to control that segment and waiting for a team to punish them for it. Just go on the outskirts. We know how Pachinki is like. We've got hills all around. So there is a way to sneak in to punish them. And this is one prime example of punishing a team based on their patterns. I really want to see a lot more of it. And right now, I think it's going to be a little bit tough to find the best spot to hold. Like, it really comes down to that phase 2. But for sure, you can already be in position to start scouting for the next one, and that's what we say, right? Progressive rotation sometimes, or making shot stops, or some people like to call it leapfrogging, and all these terms. They are great terms, Chunks, and I want to see a lot of them.
Absolutely. I want to see teams just make noise, and maybe look, as much as I want to see the fight early, I think that it's better when it is just pot shots, when it is just teams popping over toward, making each other aware of positions, but not really getting aggressive on it, because then when it comes to later games, teams have all that info they need of, okay, there's a full squad over here. Then maybe they get one opening knock and they think, okay, it's time to send it, let's go. So I think it is good when they are just trading a little bit of damage, not really burning through too much utility, though, or actually losing any players.
Absolutely. And I think we are still at that phase, to be fair, and that we are still testing things out, like teams getting a feel of how each other play, and we will see more patterns, coming through in the weeks to come. And right now, I think, you know what, we're going to play games again. Like, I know it's a huge circle, Jones, but if you really need to pick one spot to play, where would you go?
Honestly, I kind of like a spot like Everest or something in this, or maybe those hills down
Right.
to the south of Gatka, really just for the sake of info. I feel like in the early game, and I kind of talk about a lot, it isn't about setting up for that winning position. I think that's a problem that a lot of teams and players have, is they think, oh, phase one, I've got the best compound, now I'm going to win the game. No, that zone is going to move, and just because it's the best compound for the late game doesn't mean that it's easy to rotate out of in the early game. If you're in a compound like this, for instance, where you're surrounded by hills and fields, as soon as you move out of that compound, there's so many teams looking in your direction. So unless you save that until the late game, and you really just focus on putting yourself in a good rotatable position early on, then you're really not going to be able to make too much out of it. And look, if there's the strong pound in the map or in the zone, every team knows it's going to be taken. They're not going to peek it. You're not going to be getting elimination points out of that match.
Absolutely. It's control and info, right? Like, and then reinforcement. So when we know, we can't really say, compounds, per se, or just one. Like, it's all about splits. Like, certain compounds just don't work at all if you don't have a particular split to make sure that you're secured on one side, for example. But we do have a shift going away from Gakia a little bit with Ruins, almost off-center right here. So like Score is in there, Rozok's in there, the north to the river bit is also still in there. So teams to reshuffle a little bit. So they need to once again think, where do I prefer going in here? I'm already in, do I move or not? So all these questions are important, as on that minimap, they really have to slow down when they watch back chunks, I think, to see who's moving where, how, and when. Like, these will really allow you to establish that, but the DP is still incredibly strong in this game. They've nerfed it once. They said, we still like it, as we see VK taking one from INTZ off rotation as they continue to chase it down, maybe.
It's a very promising squad, but unfortunately when you lose a player early, it's not ideal. Vivo Keith, though, have been able to get themselves a nice little spot. They're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves. Quick Revenge posted up in the Watertown. I gotta say, this is an interesting position. It's one of those that can be very, very scrappy and very, very risky, but if you could maybe play a bit of a gamble, get a player up on that radio tower, you have in sight lines and so much info going forward.
Yeah, this is everything is a bit of a high risk, high reward in it. Like, you go up there, you need to find a way back down, and you just need to strike very, very well, right? Exactly the term you said, controlled aggression. Like, to only shoot when you can get more out of it. If you're just maybe about to get it, then don't risk it. As we see right here in Watertown, we are going to heat it up just a little bit. Quick Revenge, like Glowhun with that nade seems to be perfect with that pinch as well. Brilliant teamwork, the 2-on-1.
Beautifully done right there. Quick Revenge getting a quick flush to go with it. 61 players alive. There's been very little action considering that it is the PMPL. It feels like a lot of teams have been getting aggressive very early on so far, but I think they're starting to realize that, look, we are at the top level here. We need to prove that we are the best. We want to get to the globals when the time comes around. So it is about just kind of waiting your turn, not really doing too much. Smoke Esports kind of living up to that motto. They are just hunkered down. They know there's teams around. They've already lost a player. They don't want to overextend and risk another casualty.
Exactly. And right now, to be fair, like early game styles, you just need to get a lot of info, to be fair. I'm a huge fan of finding your splits according to you knowing where other squads are around that segment, and then you just have almost a format as to how to tighten it back, like structure, right? All these things are quite important. And so I'm actually going to, ask you some questions about fixed roles. Like, what have you seen so far, right? Like, we've seen sometimes the best entry fragger. We've got particular good snipers, like from here and now and then. So what are your thoughts on that when it comes to fixed roles of players?
I kind of like the idea of fixed roles. I think that the biggest thing is everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, so being able to play into that is important. But saying, okay, you're going to play Balti, you're going to be on an M4, you're going to anchor back and do this, it isn't necessarily the best idea, because look, you take those scrappy fights and you end up having such trouble. Look at Fact Esports right now, for instance. They're in a scrappy fight. There's no way you can organize for a fight like this. There's no way that you can plan that out. You can't get into formation as if, I don't know, it's a dance. You have to be adaptive and reactive, and you all have to be able to play every role on that team.
I completely agree. And sometimes that's the thing. Like, if you give a term to things, if you classify it, you may lose out on those fine details that really define that player or that team. As we see this one, like Sunken City fight, like, let's see how many bodies will be soaked in that water and drowning after all. And man, it's a tricky one. I feel like personally, I just hate this place. I can't take it to loot. It's terrible. To get out of, it's terrible. Where do I even protect my vehicles? Not a lot of choices. Right now on the edge as well. And that means on the macro side, maybe the first one to rotate gets to punish the other one.
Definitely seems like it could be the case. I mean, getting those rotations in early is always handy tool, and I think that now that we get to this point in the game, it's where you start thinking about late game positions. I wouldn't say necessarily take them, but you're starting to get a read on the zone. You're starting to really play that gamble where there's maybe a bit of a higher probability that this position that you pick as the strongest is going to be inside that zone, especially if you're at the center. So I say there's two ways to look at this now. If you're in the center, you've got yourself a nice compound, good sight lines, you kind of hold it. If you're not, then maybe just sweep the edge, go for some eliminations, try and play a little bit more surprising, catch teams off guard where they're not really expecting.
Yeah, and for this Phase 3 circle as well, Junks, Pachinki, School, Rozhok, Potato Hill, all in there. Like, so many classical positions, like we mentioned before, the term that we used, and so many ways, like, to be fair, like the river's still kind of in play just a little bit. That allows, you know, a lot of variety in crossing. And right now, as you can see, Alpha 7, they knew they've got those options, but because of their style, they say, we're going to get involved, right? Like, they got those opening knots, they say we're just going to get those and then move past, and they might be in the position to punish the two teams in Sunken City right now. That was a bold one, but they know exactly what needs to be done.
Absolutely, they do. The question is, can they actually do it? It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But there's a lot of pressure. It's all well and good having an idea, but if your plan is maybe too coordinated, you lose a player, then it all kind of falls apart. So adaptability really being tested. That's going to be tested on Phase 3 now. As soon as this thing pops, you're going to know where the end game is. And oh dear, this is a messy one. There are kind of two options for positions playing this in this zone, and that's either you go to the hill or you go to apartment. So I would maybe expect apps to get very spicy now.
This is so insane, to be fair. Like, it's one of those circles, once again, that really punish, you know, the latecomers. Sometimes it doesn't completely, because the latecomers can pinch whoever's in the circle who ignores the outside. Not quite the case here, Chance. This is going to be a bloodbath.
Absolutely the case, as now more shots come through from range. It's actually going to be Ravo this time who starts to open up and cause some trouble for teams, but seemingly not able to really connect or do too much damage to the enemies. Quick Revenge just healing up themselves as Alpha 7 start to back off of this one. Alpha 7 actually in a really good position to try and third party. They have some really nice hills there. They could absolutely wait and hold out these squads, but instead realizing this is going to be a tricky circle and focusing on getting through. I said about apartments, didn't I, how I thought it was going to get very messy very quick. The nades coming through from smoke absolutely proving it.
Yeah, and you know what? You can be the kings of apartment, but if you crash it in a position without saving your cars, let's say, it might be hard to leave. After all, it's on the northern edge, so this is really hard, like a very hard skill to have. What does it mean if I don't do this now, or if I do this now? So vehicles will be the huge thing here for noisy teams in the apartment. They can't even be quiet. As we see, Headshot Hills are going to spice up. It's going to be the M249 and gets the job done. Well, so many bullets right in there. Swagon stayed around trying to maybe hunt, and then off few didn't quite work out. So Alpha 7 stuck in the middle of their plan.
Smoke now, just do get ready to get aggressive. They're having good success with it as well. Tyson, however, has gone down as Papakill tries to watch the cross. He is a little bit too late. Needs to call that over to the team. But don't forget, Flamengo Esports right now have the player advantage. He's just doing everything he can to try and TPP it as the players swing through. In swinging out the side. Can we see a bit of a drive-by here? Nearly ends up losing the tire, but it's not enough to find the elimination. RVG do go down. They're surprisingly our first team eliminated out in 16th position in Phase 4. It shows that this is a messy endgame.
It has to. It's bound to be messy. Look at the amount of buildings in there. Practically none, like just one or two. So it's all about these knowledge now. Like which one is the OP tree? Which one is a strong rock? You gotta know. And you need to know how to react to it as well. And INTZ, like down to 2 seems like. 1 knocked, 2 alive, and more teams flowing in from that western side.
Now, Ints just hold up top. Netos is down. That leaves them with only 2 players standing. Meaning only 1 really in the fight as the other goes for the revive. Rise Esports, though, they're more than confident, but maybe should have checked their back before. Play is going to be there to shut things down as Rise now need to try and find themselves a heal. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, but Black Dragons throwing out some nades over towards F4 are going to cause a problem for them.
Man, like, they haven't even found a place to call home yet, Chunks, and we have the next shift already. Going even further from that western side, we go to the southeast. We have still Potato Hill quite in there, but the side of VK needs to hold us down.
Absolutely. Talent's going to start moving his way up the hill. Spots out 1 and a beautiful spray onto Frog. That takes him out of the fight. As Official going for some sprays of his own. You just see how teams like Loops are kind of controlling the zone. There's barely any other team inside it. Sure, there's Hidden Soul, or sorry, Honored Souls up at the top of Potato Hill. But as soon as they try down, they're going to be backfilled by so many other squads.
Yeah, and it's just so tough right now, like knowing, do we fight this or do we just go? Like if you move, it's like a cat and mouse situation. If you go, they spray you down, they move in with the space that you gained them. But it's just going to be so hard. Apartments, like we said, look at all these smoking cars, but that doesn't matter. Rise finds an opening on the other side, gatekeeping.
Brazilian Killers now in some serious trouble. 1 first aid kit left. They're going to have to start making a run through. But has been able to grab another, at least off the floor, so we'll be able to survive a little bit longer. But 13th position, I don't think anyone would have kind of predicted there to still be so many teams alive in such a messy circle. I wouldn't be surprised here if it ends up coming down to a battle where there's, 3 solos left up against each other.
Oh, I actually quite want to have that, like, for a change, but Black Dragons here need a change as well. In the pace, in the way that they are approaching the game, and even keeping some players alive, like, till the mid-game. Not quite the case here. They are that team that would punch through glass to hit you, so they do some damage, but also to themselves. Loops, on the other hand, great ground control.
SMK will be falling. Bit of a fall from grace after that chicken dinner over on Miramar, but they'll still be happy with the few points they were able to salvage. Maybe it's all they were hoping for. They've still got the rest of the weekend, don't forget. As Loops now go for some sprays of their own, they are able to see Influence Rage. The M4 is in hand. Maybe deciding not to take the shots yet. The rock is causing some problems, so the bullets won't quite be able to land unless he ends up swinging wide. Speaking of which, Black Dragon's going to start swinging wide as Inko just want to lay down and hold this position. Finally, though, Toiko opens up and takes down 1. And Becca doing exactly the same, hearing those shots as the cue to finish off Fido Keen.
What a great balance between that patience and the precision and aggression. That is beautiful to see as we have the shift continuously being terrible to these players. Right in the center, we have Loops. Everyone else not only going against the circle, but each other.
Federal just staying behind the rock, hoping for the best. Influence Rage, though, with 3 players left. Make it 4 once the heal comes through. Actually going to try and move up this hill, but instead they actually send the vehicle in the opposite direction. He's going to be getting spotted out by Toiko, and that was maybe a bit of a misplay. Now Influence Rage need to not only get a revive, but also defend against all of these teams about to push over that eastern or southern hill, I should say.
Yeah, and very interesting gameplay from Luz. They are so confident in having Toiko to just play as a solo, as the anchor point right in the center, and the others to absolutely milk everything and abuse the positions, advantage first, and they are able to put so much pressure on multiple teams, and they are just still not rushing at all.
Really, really not. Inco just going to be waiting themselves right now, using the high ground to their advantage, but still have to make a move, hoping everyone behind is going to be able to finish off the job. And little do they know it's behind them that are finishing them. It leaves only Becca left up, and it's really not going to be an easy one. Nino, though, with the vehicle run over, always love to see it.
Man, and that is the problem. Luz maybe wasted too much time. Toiko got knocked. The rest of the team hasn't got into position. Will that support be enough? We don't know. After all, it's a little bit of a dip, but that could be the shield that they need against the other side.
Menor still just going to be waiting as Loops try to heal up, remain as a 4-man. It's one of those things that's easier said than done this late in the game, but with only 4 teams standing, it really does boost their chances. They're just slaying right now. They currently have a third of the lobby on their side. So as long as they got the meds, as long as they got the util, it kind of looks like things are very favorable towards them, especially now that Influence Rage are going to be getting naded like that.
And that is brilliant. And it's great to see Loops in here. We thought for 2 games they were quite quiet. They said, nah, we're going to play the Alpha 7 style. But even better, they said the Loop style. They know exactly what to do. They were bold with their splits, and they are making it work. That is such a good display of what they know about this classical map.
Now, as everyone tries to move in, Loops kind of have the... They also have vehicles to work with. That's something that very few other teams really have. Honored Souls and Influence Rage just going to be popping some nades back and forth. Toiko, though, just picked up a big boy gun from that drop. I am excited to see that thing get used.
Man, Toiko, they say, no, the circle is what I'm going to say. Look at it going to their side once again. But here's the test. There will be multiple teams coming in potentially at the same time, and Loops needs to find a way to control it once again as the team who's got blessed. Right, so Toiko still playing that line, MG5, MG3, extremely strong gun right now. He will find it, and that's knock.
Toiko, nicely done with the MG3, but needs to push up a little bit further. Still a couple players left. You got to think that Loops are going to push this as a team. That's exactly what they do now. Chief is there. Spots a player out behind. Is going to flush that one. His Honored Souls in some real trouble. There's now only 2 teams left up. It's Loops and Influence Rage. Influence Rage, only 1 player.
Oh, no.
Sorry, make it 2 as he actually gets caught from the off angle. Even I miss it, but we have X-Ray on, so being able to...
No way.
Off angle might have just been absolutely huge. Took down to... Plays it down to a 2 versus 2. Kazagi now starting to peek out from the rock. Knows that Loops are going to be over here somewhere, but themselves a bit of a ridge line to try and work out of. Lil Boy sneaks up, knowing there's players nearby, but Loops, look, they've got the zone. They've got a ridge. They don't need to move.
They are so ready to fight. I know they don't have the kill counts, but they have the patience, but it doesn't matter. Loops got the position, and they've got the knob, and now got the advantage.
Chief hopping up on the rock to try and get a little bit more info. It seems like Toiko knows he's reloading. He is ready to just burst with that thing, go through, spray it, finish off that final elimination to make it 14 overall. But never mind the style points. The vehicle run over is there. They are feeling so good that they can't wait to go and get themselves a snack.
Well, amazing. Off to get the snack, as we saw already. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And that's a celebration for sure. And Loops coming back to make things interesting, Chunks. Like we thought is going to be, you know, a bit of a change, you know, for them to maybe have a hard day. No, like all the teams are taking turns, and the team that stays so far, arguably, is Influence Rage. Yes, not quite a flashy game compared to game 1, but they know what they could work with. You know, like it was hard playing through those grounds, but yeah, exactly. The experience comes in really, really strong.
Very impressive indeed. That's another game down. We still have 2 more left to go tonight, but before that, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes with game number 4 over on Sandhawk.
fatiar. Faz o ruchão do Imba e acorda pra matar. Descarregando pente no frente, tu foi solado. Distribuindo kill, a vitória pro nosso lado.
Mapa na tela, avião voando.
Welcome back, everybody, to PMPL Brazil. 2 games now remain for the evening, and last match was a scrappy one. It felt like the kind of eastern side of Potato Hill ended up being where things ended, and it was rough for a lot of these teams. Very open terrain, and so many teams standing up until like phase 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to say how hard it was, but it's also the circles chance. We start with what?
It seems like we may have lost Professor Tarzan there, so apologies about that one. Taking a look at the replays, though, it was very impressive. Loops obviously were the favorites to try and take that one. They had the player advantage, but Lil Boy being able to just lay prone right there and sneak up was really impressive indeed. Taking down 2 of those players, then Toiko swinging up round the top. I mean, Loops hunkered down. They did what they could, but they maybe got a little bit greedy at times. As Toiko there just kind of looted up, ready to make the push. It felt like they really did struggle. We will take a look over at the match standings, though, and see how that one ended. Loops Esports, 14 eliminations to go alongside those placement points. That works out pretty nicely for them, I'll be honest. Honored Souls also still getting up there in the standings. Influence Rage, they don't quite get as many points, but still feeling really good about themselves. Everyone in the top half kind of really deserves to be there. Looking over at the total usage and the number of eliminations, obviously Cardo's back in, stealing the show, proving exactly why he's up there. But Chief was able to get a decent number of assists for his team, obviously helping out Cardo's get up there. Toiko also putting out a serious ammo, lots of bullets down range. I think the MG3 definitely gonna be a part of that one. All in all, though, to be able to be in the top 5 takes a certain level of skill that Loops are definitely starting to demonstrate. I can't wait to see the overall standings, see how this squad are doing, because it feels like as they get up even more, they are just becoming a team that are ready for war. And looking at today, at least, they have absolutely popped off 29 points just then. That was insane to see. So hopefully we can get Tarzan back in as soon as possible, and he can maybe talk us through it a little bit better, as now we just kind of wait for the next game to start. Influence Rage, definitely a takeaway from that one. Maybe struggling a bit at the end with getting aggressive onto the hillside, but you have to kind of understand it from the point of view of if they had made the push to try and get up the ridge, a team like Loops could have very easily peaked out some major problems for them. So it's definitely an unfortunate ending for them, but seeing Black Dragons up at the top end of things yet again is always very promising. As down at the bottom end of things, it is very surprising seeing Alpha 7 go out. I do wonder if that maybe exposes themselves with some of the teams that did so well earlier on now being above them, close to them in the leaderboard. Sure, they probably still held on first place in the overall standings, but it's far from ideal. As we wait for Tarzan to get back in, let's just ask our producer, have we got any other cool stats we can pull out to maybe fill some out? Just throw them up. Yeah, throw up an MVP stat. Let's go for it. See what we got here. And there it is. Best of the match is going to be Nino right there. 5 eliminations, 1 no. 23 minutes to survive, making it to the end, and a lot of damage done compared to very little healing. So that is certainly an acknowledgement of just how aggressive he was getting, while also not exposed himself enough to get taken out early on. So really impressive indeed. Producer, can we maybe get some other stats? What about that head-to-head stats? See if we can pick out two cool MVPs and compare their performances together, because that was a pretty interesting one earlier, seeing the difference between the two MVPs. But I think for now we'll just go and look back at the overall standings just while we wait for Tarzan to try and get back in here. And here it is. It's Alpha 7, 224 points, still in first place. But after that chicken, Loops have gotten themselves their 4th of the league so far, and now seriously closing up the gap. Outside of that, teams like Rise, Influence, Rage, kind of lacking on the chicken dinner front, but to be able to hold onto a top 4 position with only 1 win is so impressive. And I think that if they are able to maybe chain that momentum together a bit more, win those end game situations where they are maybe struggling, it could definitely be a different story for who ends up being at the top of this one. Looking over at the second half on the leaderboard, though, it is a bit of a different story, although very surprising to see that Smoke Esports are there in 17th position with a chicken dinner. Just 1 more win, it feels like. We're able to get them into that top 16 and really start stacking up. I believe Professor Tarzan is finally back, so I can give my voice a bit of a rest. Let's run through some stats.
It's hard. It's been hard for me and for a lot of these teams as well. Do you guys hear me okay? Hello? Chunks? You okay here?
Hello, loud and clear. There it is.
Brilliant. Well, that's the stats gun. I'm so sorry, guys, but you know what? It's rough, right, sometimes, and it's not just for me. I think it's more so for the teams. Coming into the map that they have no experience in, for today so far. And actually, to be fair, like, Sano haven't been getting the love in our scene because it's been too snaky, people say, a bit too random. But I think there is a way to play it, and we want to see the top teams show the other teams how to do it, because we seem to have found tricky and interesting strats. For example, Junks, we've got the heal strat, like we've seen a lot in PMGC. People are not surprised, like not scared to take 40, 50 first states just so they can escape entering the zone, right? So that is one way to see it.
Yeah, I mean, taking a look over at the results from that game, I think I find it really interesting that Alpha 7 weren't actually able to pick up any points that match. So it's considerably closed the gap, and it's about 1 win in it now. So if you're in like that top 3 position and you're able to win this game, then Alpha 7 might just be getting kicked out of first place.
Well, yes. Here's the thing, and I'm going to say that again. Kick them down, like put them in 10th place right now. I feel like they will still find a way back. They will probably be so angry that we've done that. But here, Loops coming in once again. Like, we've been so surprised, like, that they did not form a better roster after some changes. Same for Influence Rage. They were the initial, like, Loops, but I think they'll be a bit pissed off if I continue to say that. They want to stay completely clear from that organization. So let's see what they can do. Like, let's see which one is the better squad this time around. Int on the other side, still inting a little bit maybe here and there. Flamengo slowly moving away from that bottom pack, and we may see some change coming through.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things really start to switch up. The teams that have maybe just come into the lobby now have a bit more experience. Now is their opportunity to really start to shine. But honestly, if they don't start to do it quick, they have a big gap to try and climb. And still, obviously, 2 play days left of the weekend after today. So there's still a lot of time to do it. But you got to think getting wins on the board now is going to help out. And I think that's something that I forget which team it was. It was Smoke Esports down at the bottom,
right,
coming in, getting a chicken dinner in game number 2. That will definitely give them a boost. They could not only look at the mistakes they made, like many of the other teams coming in tonight will be doing. They'll be looking at their mistakes and how to avoid them. They can look at the positives that they made and try and focus more on them and try and utilize them maybe a little bit more in their game plan going forward.
Yeah, you've reminded me of something, Chunks, because we've been making so many decent points. When it comes to a point of view, you can only bring in so many learning points. You can only focus on 2-3 things before overloading your circuits, and we've seen that before, and I've experienced it myself casting, and that's going to be the key learning point. You can have as many focus you want, doesn't make sense, but analysis, right? Learning points, right? But you need to have a focus. It has to be digestible, it has to be practical, and that's going to be a very, very key one for them tonight, because halfway through tomorrow, Chunks, we will be officially through half of the amount of games for these weekends for the league play, and that is going to be the narration that can be a little bit scary for some of these teams. Can we come back? Why are we still here after the halfway point? All these things, be very, very careful what you say to yourself.
Let's take a look over at this one. Fact Esports. Apparently, Sanhok is Fact Esports, which makes me think that they must be pretty good on this map. They're currently averaging 2.3 eliminations per game, which isn't ideal, but their survival time, their damage is really up there.
Yeah, very surprising, actually. Like, makes me want to go back and dig deeper when it comes to what really happened on Sanhok. Like, why does it work? Like, for their drop, like, why didn't other team get to punish them for repeating certain things that seemingly working very, very well? This is amazing stats. But as you can see, there's one thing for sure that we should not miss out. It's the damage to heal ratio right there, Chunks. What the heck was that? And that's exactly why there's some consistency to be found in a different way of gameplay only for this map.
Absolutely. Speaking of this map, we should probably take a look at a couple cute cinematics of it, because we're heading over to Sanhok for our first time this evening, and unfortunately the last time. It's a shame. This is one of my favorite things about PUBG Mobile, is getting to see just the pace of Sanhok and how unpredictable it can be.
It will be, trust me, it will keep being that way as long as this map is here. And of course, boot camp is what I want to see. Like, I know I've been a little bit more like on the nice side, but no, just fight each other, cause damage, all sorts of damage, right? Emotional damage, even if you lose. So be ready if you go back to that really, really key battleground as we go through the rest of the map. Extremely nice bits as well, like, but could be quite strategic. I do want some endings around there, not this one, Paradise. I'm a little bit bored. Give me those small shacks and these weird bits on the edge.
Give me, you know what I really want is, that kind of junction where the river meets at 3 different points. I want an endgame around there. Yeah, I want to see. I've seen it before. I played matches where it's ended there before, but I've never actually seen it in a competitive game.
Ooh. So trifecta, we've formed like terms around those positions. This one here, you mean? That was a decent one. Around those rivers, 3 ways, and then a lot of it's separate, but not a lot of ground to play off, ladies and gentlemen. As we enter the map of Sanhok, the jungle is going to be heating up 4 kilometers times 4 kilometers, the smallest map of this competitive scene yet. And then we are going to see how they repeat, as we had cameras on F4 or Fact. They need to continue with a domination, maybe with those first aids.
Yeah, I think, at least judging from my casting in the Americas Elite League, teams are definitely a little bit more confident going for a heal strat. And we kind of talk about this all the time. Me and Imperium say you should never have your heal strat as a plan A. I feel like if you do that, you're showing a certain level of, we're not very confident with this, we don't feel good, we're going to struggle. Whereas if it's your plan B, it then becomes a little bit more viable, especially on a map like Sanhok, where there's a hell of a lot of loot. You can get it pretty much anywhere. Matt Vicio, though, what was that?
It's just good shots. Eagle eye, they say. I think that in the game, there was this reward where you can get like titles for completing certain things. That's about one. Like, haven't even touched the ground yet. What a way to start the game. He can go back, and I wonder how that player feels like. Like, how do I even be useful now? It's so embarrassing. There's not just our team that sees it. So I really want to find out. But you know what? We have a nice, colorful distribution across Sanhok. Seems like everyone knows their ground, with Painan in the middle. So Loops maybe to repeat what they've done last game. They really need that type of continuous performance, I would say, because they've been up and down a little bit. I know they are good, but that's the thing, Trunks. They are fine to come back after they were down 1 or 2 games.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. Fact Esports, currently the team to watch on Saturday. Sandhawk. Apparently, they have had very strong performances over here. They are rated the best Sandhawk team. Different story for Flamingo, though, isn't it? Really not doing too great right now. But look, they're only a few games in. They've still got time to go. And they still have the potential to win this fight up against Brazilian Killers.
Oh, yes, but I really doubt it. I'm going to be the skeptical one this time. You know why? It's just landscapes. Kampong, South and North. The South teams, or South players, I should say, get to rotate around and this and that. But if they get pushed on the North side where Flamengo is, where are you running across? Like these open grounds. So it's very easy to set up a wraparound, if you've got some scope as you control the hills on the western side, then you can really pinch this team through. But I think there might be a little bit more looting to do, but that's the luxury. You get to loot more on that south side.
Now we just kind of wait to see which team is going to be the first to take some shots. I'm a little bit surprised that we don't really have too many hot drops outside of, I think Kampong is probably the only one of note right here. So it's going to be interesting to see. Esports, though, this is a team that are very fresh to the lobby, but have been putting in work so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like when you have one of those big games like earlier, then you can really use that to come through. And we know the journey of this team was from, I think, basically nothing, like for this competitive season, grinded their way through, had the hard bits, right? Hard games, and not making through it. Now coming back, and this is the time to make it work. Flamengo, though, holding still quite well. They know the plan of the other team. They know they didn't have the space to work with, but they use it well for whatever is left.
Absolutely Mythic here, going to start moving through, but doesn't spot the player over on his left. Maybe should have turned those headphones up a little. Wasn't able to hear the movement. Quick revenge. I wouldn't really call it revenge. I call that a quick point.
Yeah, we'll be set up for some revenge from many if they continue to play that way. As we see Kampong continue to heat up, Flamengo is not there to stay slow, and they have been 2v2 so far. No, 2 versus 3, 2-4-3, and it's going to be so slow. Everyone's going down.
That's what you hope for. Flamengo now going for the revive, as are Brazilian Killers, though. It's not really too much either team has gained out of it just yet. Luzizia, I really struggle with these Brazilian names, man, is going to be moving up top to try and find a bit of an angle, but it actually may end up being the grenade that's a little bit more useful right now. They are caught between two walls. If you can just get a grenade into roughly the right place, they're almost guaranteed to take damage.
Very interesting within the city fight here. It's all about choke points.
Right
you
now,
see someone land
will
somewhere.
Be trading back and forth. Max preparing one of his own.
Interesting fight so far. I'm not sure whether you guys hear me okay, because today's internet's been playing up and all that stuff, but this dynamics...
It's a little weird. Let's fill in chat real quick on why we keep talking over each other. We are professionals, but we're having some internet troubles, so one of us is always lagging for the other by like 10 seconds. So I'm just going to fill for this one real quick, as Flamengo tried to make the push. Maxon going to be moving through, but he's almost set on fire. Instead, he's only going to be tagged up. One more bullet will probably find it. Goes for a bit of a jump shot. Can he connect? Seemingly not. Yes, he can in the end. Never mind. Maxon is there to finish off Brazilian Killers out in 16th position.
Well, and that is what we said for this team. They came back okay. And that was also off a little bit of a tricky position as well, I think, around Kampong. But they made the break, right? So the rapid round to the western side is more like the side of Brazilian Killers not taking the chance to really pinch the other team and now getting punished.
Law still out down the hill, trying to maybe take some shots over towards Fact Esports right now. It looks like Inco potentially going to start moving on to them. That is not a team you really want to be coming up against, even if you are apparently the best squad on Sandhawk.
Yeah, maybe they just know how to play the best compound. We talk about these three-way positions. They hold what we call a trifecta compound. They seem to have a really set structure as to how to hold it. And here's the thing, like, they can still play as they want. We can never be certain with the circle. It's so hard to leave this place if you've been trying to shoot at everyone around you, right? So, but on the other side, Storm needs to make some move as well as they be a bit slow. They heard some shots maybe. They know Kampong has been maybe a little bit busier than usual, so they are there to punish and pinch. This is the actual pinch of Kampong that we want to see.
Absolutely, it is. Inco up top, just kind of scoping down. They have an idea that Fact are going to be over here, but at least for now, there's not really much they can do off of it. Taking a couple shots over in that direction, trying to cause maybe a bit of a distraction, maybe try and bait out some peaks. Inco, definitely an aggressive squad, it feels like, but it also feels like at times tonight, things have just kind of fallen apart for them.
It's tricky. Like I think I haven't watched them quite as often as you have at Chunks, but they seem to want to do a lot of stuff, but didn't end up finding the position to execute them. And when they actually do try something, it feels like a lot of effort to just get a very average amount. So that's what I see so far. I don't know whether you have other views or is it just them today? Like, what do you think?
It's a good question, and I wish I could maybe give some better answers, but I think there's only so much you can read into a team having a couple of off days. I think that giving Co another day, it could definitely change. If it doesn't change with probably this weekend, then they've got to be stressing. Then there are some serious problems because this is a top team. They should be at the top of the standings fairly consistently.
Here's the thing as well. Do they have to stress? Like, after all, this is a very tricky thing because you can arguably say, hey, you only need to be in top 16 to go to the finals, and you can just be extremely sloppy. But here's the thing. A habit is a habit. Like, if you allow it to continuously happen, then it gets into some sort of your system, and you just automatically or subconsciously do it to do the wrong thing. So I actually don't believe in people saying that, oh, teams take an easy day to day. No, like it carries over. Sometimes how you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
Yeah, I mean that's fair enough, but I think the big Inco comes down to consistency, doesn't it? Because they have these massive games and then they just kind of chill out for a bit, and if they were able to chain those games together or even have like mediocre games outside of that, it wouldn't even be a conversation that we were having. But because they're currently in a position right now where they've got so much pressure on their shoulders, they are a top team, everyone's looking at them as kind of a favorite here to be in the top end of the leaderboard. I feel like there should be a little bit more pressure on them. I feel like they should work on that consistency quite a bit more.
Yeah, and you know what? We have something very interesting here. We talked about people punishing other teams. Right, okay. We've got Storm going to try to pinch down the side of Flamengo and ended up being hunted on the other side. On the So's knows the ground that they need to play. They know these other teams and where they may go through as Myth try to take that one as the circle continues to be a little bit undecisive going towards that trifecta area.
Definitely so. Now it just becomes maybe a bit of a waiting game. Cardo's in. Trying to finish off that Inco player over on the other side of the bridge, but doesn't quite have that line of sight, unfortunately. So really nothing going to be coming of it just yet. Loop's just going to have to wait. They're all looking for a second, though. So if they do find the angle, it might just be real trouble for Inco, but it seems like the revive is going to come off. The same maybe not being said for Honored Souls, though, as they've lost one who's really out in no man's land.
That is going to be quite interesting still, because you can kind of turn the tides there, but you have to go to have a huge wraparound, and that's a problem with what I call, this segment, to the east of Quarry. Very hard. We've got dips going back to Quarry, and so it's very hard to escape from this area. Seems like they just need to take this fight, and I feel like that's the decision right now as they use that nade to finish off that knock. It's going to be a turnaround for Storm Gaming.
Absolutely seems so. Dudu coming in, gets himself an elimination. That's the second now for Storm, and it's hopefully the start of bigger things for them because they do need that spark, as ironic as it sounds for a team like Storm, that kind of bolt of lightning to really jolt them and kick them into gear, because I'm not sure really what's going on for them, whether they've just been playing passive, but it feels like I've not even seen their name yet tonight. They have really not been up to much.
Yeah, or it could be just a switch on from Storm Gaming. And here's the thing, like with this team, they've got Dadine, but not quite there to save the teammate yet. God, I've jinxed them so hard, Chunks. It was GC God being the god that he is. A two-piece and trying to do all this dirty work just as a duo.
It's easy. As the Molotovs try to come through, they're maybe going to be a little bit short. Nino tries to move through more and more aggressively as the zone is there. He could very easily try and pre-fire through the window. That's exactly what he does. He is actually able to connect with a little bit of damage, not really enough to convert into either a knock or a flush. But as the Molotov comes through, it is going to be made a lot harder for Storm to actually hit.
Yeah, not an easy maneuver as well, as you can see. Like, trying to go slightly over-aggressive maybe for Onitsos, but after all, this is tankable, right? It's tankable, so it's better to do some work from elsewhere, getting a little bit more info to know how big of a window you have when it comes to time. But Dadine here, picking his team back up slowly. Let's talk about Dadine a little bit, because Chunks, before I had the honor to work with you, Dadine was actually the IGL of Loops, and at that time, those who are under him, his soldiers, were these boys from Influent Rage mostly. So he's almost like an outsider now, going to elsewhere, trying to prove a point. Maybe this is just a start. There's more to do, but quick revenge, trying to take matters into their own hand, and Flamengo cannot catch a break since they had a small breakthrough.
Yeah, it feels like Sandhawk is very much one of those maps where if you take a fight, every other team is going to be heading in your direction. That is absolutely what we just saw there. GZM still trying to find a bit of an angle from the high ground as the zone gets ready to pop. Will we get a decisive ending, or will we maybe get that little river I was hoping for? I'll take it, I'll take it. It's either a mountain or a river. I'm good with that, or boot camp.
It's the closest that we're going to get today. I feel like we will take it for sure. It's not just the trifecta. It's not just a river. It's still those Northwest Island mountains that are still, in play. And sometimes we feel like we're going there, like by phase 3, and then everyone's like, well, it's one of those games we hate it. Whoever's up there is going to win. Not quite the case still. So this is still going to be quite mysterious, and I do quite like that.
It does kind of feel like that as GZM just try and scout out from above, popping those tires. You know what? It's one of those strategies that people think, oh, what's kind of the point in it? But on a position like that, and it's something we spoke about on Miramar early on, and we spoke about it actually on a Wrangle as well. When it comes to getting those early game positions, you want one that's easy to rotate out of. That position that GZM just spotted is very hard to rotate out of without a vehicle, because it is just wide open, and popping tires is probably going to make quite a difference.
Yeah, it's going to make a huge difference. I think vehicles on Sandhawk is very, very interesting because, yes, you're making a lot of sound, a lot of noise on a very small map, but they're only... Sometimes there are situations where you can only get out of with a vehicle, and that is where it's going to be very interesting as we have Kayovsky controlling this one. Bring me back to 2020 PMGC when they're part of Loops, they drop bootcamp, they always cross this river within the 3-minute mark. And Kayovsky knows this like the back of his hand as he continues to punish 1, 2, 3, and they are just dead.
Really impressive to see. That's Alpha 7 falling with, I believe, no points for the second time in a row. This is not what they wanted. The cracks are maybe starting to show. And the worst part for them is teams like Influence Rage that are close behind them on the leaderboards are starting to pick up some serious numbers.
And take the matters in their own hands as well. Chunks, they were the team that took them down, and I just love to see it. I've been waiting for this, because this team, I know they played boot camp in 2 PMGCs ago, and the recent one, Alpha 7, was there. Hey, you know what? Don't forget the Elk Kings. They will come back to hunt you, as we have Loops. We mentioned their name, but not quite this group of players, but seems like this new and fresh roster knows how to frag for sure. 2 kills and just wrapping around these hills still to the southwest of Painan. They knows it. And they are really, really good so far.
It definitely seems like it, doesn't it? This team is very confident in the way that they are playing. They've got themselves a decent number of eliminations tonight, so many points on the board, but as of yet, they haven't quite been able to take first place. They are getting close, though, and with Alpha 7 out, it's time for them to close the gap. Smoke still have one player left up, and Loop seem to be waiting, but they should probably start thinking about making a move pretty soon if they can't confirm this point pretty quick. Now they're getting really aggressive. This is a bit of a gamble, sending 2 players out to the rock to try and scout for it.
Yeah, I do like the thinking, saying that, oh, we've got the numbers, let's get this point, but not quite the time to do it. If they are like 30 seconds earlier, then that might be good, because they've got quite a lot to chase, and even more than they thought. Quite away from their position, all the way to that north. No hills this time, but a river to separate the left and right.
Chief just running through, as this is going to be a brutal ending. It's kind of exactly what I wanted, though. Boot camp is still in, and outside of that, it's just going to be cliffs. Now, the thing I find interesting about the terrain in this area of the map is really the fact that there is like 2 bigs on each of those cliffs that teams are potentially going to be able to play. But it's not going to be an easy one. First of all, you have to try and swim. You're going to be like a sitting duck when you're making that cross over the water. Everyone is going to be looking down in your direction. Fact Esports still inside zone, though. They are going to be the squad that is really focused on holding every other team out.
Yeah, and I think this is a time as well, chance to bring back that, ideally, if, as we respect Imperium energies, ideally the plan B. And I think this is where the experience comes in. When do we start transitioning to that? How many players do we send in? And do we just trust that one guy with all the first aids? When does he actually start popping them? Can't we just use like my stims now and just like boost up and all that stuff, use bandages? That is part of the skill. But the correct transition into that with the accurate assessment will be the key thing for us to appraise how good they are.
Absolutely the case. Frog is just going to be here for now, trying to find himself a little bit of an opening. But to be honest, Inco are being very cautious not to expose themselves, so going to struggle with that one. Will certainly try, though, and credit to him, because now shots are going to be coming out from all around. Fact Esports just kind of waiting, not making too much noise. The same not being said for Rise, though, as they finally start to make their cross. One of their players actually falls into the water after getting a knock.
Are you kidding me? I thought it was these crazy maneuvers around the edge of rock. Sometimes you do have a split second where you can place a crosshair and shoot, but in fact, is trying to control this. I feel like their junks. I'm going to be harsh. I know they are very good on this map so far with their points, but I feel like they could use this funneling effect. They're pushing them to the water. Might as well take the next rock and put even more pressure on.
I mean, you think so, wouldn't you? But at the same time, it's that unknown factor. They've been in this compound for such a long time. They kind of are lacking info, and that's the downside to playing compounds on Sandhawk is outside of the audio, you don't have info. You haven't really seen those enemies, because as soon as you peek on Sandhawk, you're spotted from 2-3 different angles.
Exactly. And right now, we have Influenced Rage playing their standard spot. I quote it already from 2 years, a year or so before. They know the spot. They always cross here. They know how to use this as their home until end game if need be, and seems like this could be a possibility.
Definitely seems like it. Vivo Keed's going to start making their push throughs. They do lose a player. Diego is doing what he can to try and spam through the smoke in the hopes of attacking another player. Little does he know, Factor actually a little bit further to the left than he maybe expected. Thinks he hears, or maybe his teammate thinks he's seen something up above that hill. Just going to be scouting up above as McGrellin actually gets shot in mid-air. Does need to throw down a smoke to be able to get out of there. Fact Esports finally do make themselves a push, though, into the shack. They should be able to loot up some bodies, but still 2 players not inside zone for them.
Yeah, and it's good. Like, they know the timings, they've got their cars protected, and they found, the window to enter. But as we can see, Influence Rage doesn't want to make it easy, and that's going to be a great pickup from Little Boy.
Now, Little Boy just watching out to try and find himself a little something. That's exactly what he looks like doing. Big damage on towards the Ints player there, even if it doesn't quite convert over into a knock. Influence Rage do lose Law in return, though, as things start to get messy. There's two separate squads that they have to worry about right now. Ints are actually swimming over, and if Black Dragons cause enough of a distraction, it could put Influence Rage in a pinch.
Yeah, it's very important to have that division of, what's the term? Like, they have to delegate very properly. How many should watch the West and how many to watch the East? I feel like at this point, they need to draw a lot more attention back to the swimmers. Those fishies bite, and they can bite real hard. And there we go.
Absolutely can. DA trying to take a big chunk out of Black Dragons, but unfortunately, not quite enough. They end up losing a teammate instead, as Cello just watching out for an angle of his own. Those Black Dragons have to make a cross, but I think they're maybe neglecting the fact that they need to move too.
Yeah, and you can see teams already started the heel strat. You have to. Sometimes it's just so hard to cross, and we have Influence Rage actually getting the position once again, but Inco refuse to go down. But this is the crazy thing as well, Chunks. Sometimes the luck factor as well. The amount of players that we have, 21, we've got 11 teams alive. Like, we're just battling when it comes to who heals better.
It's kind of crazy to think that we still have all these players standing in such a small zone, but it feels like that's going to end very quickly. 18 left alive right now, but Inco looking like they're about to lose one as well. Law goes to the peak, spots out one from Rise, and should be able to finish off the job. That's going to be Rise out in 9th position. Into the top 8, though, go Fast and Inco, so they will be getting eliminated down to just 6 teams. It's RV6 that went down as well. Influence Rage, we spoke about this squad. We told them that they needed to pick it up. That seems to be exactly what they're doing, but there's still a full 4-man they have to come up against in the form of that team behind them. McGrellin, though, going to focus his attention down the hill onto Fast Esports. The jump shot is enough to get the info. The UMP gets the elimination. Now 5 teams remain, but still 11 players up.
Practically 2 teams to fight for the throne here. Both very active this time. And VK, we have not seen them enough, but this is about time. Will Influence Rage still have the ammo to do this, though? They do have the circle, they do have the knowledge and experience, they have the momentum as well. But this is not to be, taken lightly, as we see Ints knowing how much they can do, and those 7 first aids will matter so much to see whether they can out-heal. And that's going to be a point difference of, let me think, a good 4 to 6 points, I think. For the 5th place, let me think, 6 points. Yeah, a good 4-point difference. That's huge. And that is down to whether they can tap quickly.
We will see. Influence Rage, though, and Vivo Key, both in a bit of a nade battle. I think they maybe realized that the heal strat is going on. I think taking a look at the zone, the amount of shots and noise being made, I think they know there's a heal strat going on. So I think they're almost both putting off the fight for a little bit in the hopes that even if we do lose the fight, we're going to be able to get ourselves a couple placement points. But now it does finally come, and it looks going to start popping off. It's going to be Lil Boy to open things up over on towards Adrian. Finds a second player as well. Follows it up with the molly, but while it's in hand, it's a nade from DA that's actually able to connect. Federal tries to move to cover, but they need to try and get the revive. Ideally, Federal's down to low HP. One more nade would have done it, but he's forced to back off. It's down to Kawasaki to peek up over the top, but Federal goes down as well. It is an absolute red zone coming out here from Vivo Key. They may have lost Cello, but now he's going to be back in the fight, and McGrellin's the one closing the distance, UMP in hand.
Well, just pre-firing up that ridge. It's about the Mets as well. Influence Rage been fighting short range, close range, long range, all along, and they can't heal. And that's going to be the push over from the hill, and that will be Vivo Keo trying to take this into their own hands. Law will try to take the 1v1, and he gets it. And it's going to be them with the chicken dinner practically to slowly go down, but doesn't matter. All of the others are fishies or are healing. They take the win with 15 bloody kills, Chunks. 30-pointer this time round, and they refuse to go down. They refuse to be second. They want to stay, and they want to redeem themselves through the seasons.
Credit to Luke there for trying to take a couple shots, even at that kind of range. What doo-doo? Goes for the spray before running out of I'm actually able to connect. It's Influence Rage that get themselves the chicken dinner. There's the moment where they won it. The RGB lights, they just make you a better gamer, right?
Exactly. You have to have it. Like, that is the definition. When you're in there, you are in the zone, and that's how you can perform. But a bit weird that we don't have it on our screen. So we're going to leave that one a little bit. But Influence Rage, what a good display of game knowledge and just even resource management. It's not easy to fight for that long, Chunks.
Oh, impressive indeed to be able to consistently get up there, and it was about time they got the chicken dinner. I've kind of been waiting, and I think that they delivered. We do have one more game remaining. It's gonna be on Erangel. It's gonna be coming up in about 5 minutes, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Primeira queda, junto squad e corre pra lutear. Faz o ruchão do Imba e acorda pra matar. Descarregando pente no frente, tu foi solado. Distribuindo kill, a vitória pro nosso lado.
Mapa na tela, avião voando!
So, Influence Rage finally get themselves a chicken dinner. That should bump them up pretty considerably in the standings. And let's also not forget, in the past 2 games, Alpha 7, who were our first place team, have not picked up a single point.
That is actually a huge disappointment. And I will still have faith in them. I will choose to do so because we've seen in the past that they can still bounce back. But that's not the team that we want, you know, to be called usually the kings of Brazil. You want real consistency. You want them to be a little bit more cautious, to be fair. Like, you just can't, you always need to have a bit of a plan B. You're gonna go for a swim, have, you know, have some plan, right, so that you don't all go down, but doesn't seem to find that so far.
No, unfortunately not. Going back and looking at the previous game, though, it was a bit of a messy one. It seemed like it could have gone either way, but it was the utility usage in the end that managed to really open up the fight. Vivo Key tried to get aggressive onto it. I'll give them credit. They did extremely well, but when you've got a team like Influence Rage, even with 12 eliminations, you know, you're gonna struggle to be able to pick up that chicken dinner. McGrellin did what he could, but it was just Law popping off with the hip fires to be able to shut things down. That's what won them the match. Then it was just a case of healing up and letting those players busting out the heal shot get eliminated by the play zone.
Yeah, you know what? I've just seen a very small thing there, but really turned the tides. Towards the end, VK got 2 versus 1, so Law had the 1v2 because the 2 players of VK did not come up together to add that pressure. They went 1 by 1, they did not have the good communication towards that end, and that really lost them the game there. So these are where, you know, teams need to practice. You just need to experience it more to know how you can withstand pressure. Like if it happens anywhere earlier, you would see that as a really, really big mistake. It's like there's not even any pressure. Why can't you do something so basic? Just don't go one by one. Take the clear 2v1. Have the clear comms. 1 not 2 not last guy. Something like that. They should have known, but that's what makes you do on the stage of PMPL where you didn't have quite the experience.
Yeah, very unfortunate there to not be able to make it. But at the end of the day, it's a learning experience. Every game of PUBG, you'll learn something new, don't you? Let's take a look over at the top stats from that game. And wow, stealing the show.
Man, Law with the kills. Low boy say, I'll do a bit more damage, and then look at Kowalski now taking slightly more of a backseat. But as you can see, like if we just track through the top 5, they do take almost all of it. Like if more than half actually, now that I run through it. So this is their game. That was their spot. It has always been, and they've showed it.
Absolutely, really impressive performance to come out from them there. Look at that, 6 eliminations, but also having Lil Boy and Kalzagi up there. It shows just how strong they were able to come out. That led serious points from that match. I can't wait to have a look over at the leaderboards and see exactly how they stacked up. But for Influence Rage, look, we spoke about them as a team that have potential, that haven't really been delivering. Is this finally what we can expect for them? Are we going to see more games than this? Or is it just one of those kind of star performances that they can't keep up the pace with?
But you know what? Like, I think they have been doing quite well, and I will even root for them over Alpha 7 in the next one. But we've got some graphics to look at to really illustrate what a crazy chaos we had earlier. But it was Influence Range. Like, through and through that game, a lot of heal strat, but also teams really taking matters in their own hand. They know the segment chunks. We saw basically action from start to finish.
Yeah, action was the theme of that game. 15 eliminations up there for Influence Ratio. That's 30 points. We see Loops able to pick themselves up a couple of points from that match. That's 7 overall for them that game. But I think that will seriously help them out in terms of gaining that lead over Alpha 7, because Alpha 7 haven't been able to grab any points. Anything that you grab, even if ideally you want that 30-point game Influence Rage had, is still going to be a bonus. It's still going to help you out.
Yeah, you know what they need to grab? They need to grab a notebook and just write it down. Like, they need to know straight away what went wrong there, because they didn't only just get 0 points or last place. Did they get 0 points? Yes, they did. And something must be severely wrong when it comes to both macro, and micro, and all that stuff. It's just not right, and needs to be fixed. And whether they can fix it for this next game, we don't know. But they start on Erangel with the win, and they come back to maybe wrap it up the same way if they can, but it's not going to be easy. 1 point right there, just tying Brazilian Killers, the other team that was so far less experienced.
Yeah, and you know what? Credit to those teams all the way down at the bottom to be able to salvage at least 1 point apiece, even when the situation wasn't ideal for them. And there were so many teams up until the late game with a lot of solos still out there in the blue. So credit to them for being able to survive that long, even if they would get any survival points, just purely based around how many teams were already in zone holding them out. Let's take a look over at the MVP though and see exactly who that was for the match. And it's going to be Law. 6 eliminations, 4 knockouts, 26 minutes survived, 2 assists, 696 damage, 245 healing. Talk about that ADR.
I think it's just amazing. Like, from what they did, they had the guts to go towards that shoreline and know exactly when to cross. They punished some teams before them, and they were not hunted by the team after them. They had a way to cross to really guarantee safety on either side, and that really shone through. And Law being in there, mate, we know that he's been really, really good, but to stand out outside of already an all-star team, that means something.
Yeah, being the MVP is super important. Don't forget that there is going to be an extra prize for that overall tournament MVP, but we've still got quite a ways yet. So as long as you're consistently getting up there, you can get yourself a little bit of extra cash. Look, Erangel next. We've seen a lot of interesting plays on Erangel No wacky zones yet, though. Is it maybe time we get one? Because, I mean, Sandhawk kind of warmed us up for a really wacky one.
It's weird, Chunks, because we had like mean shifts, but the circles themselves can do a bit better. Lack of a better term, so we'll continue to stay terrible. We will see, and we've got very southern playing path so far on there, so maybe we could use this change. Stelba, maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like us to go Stalber or something now, head up somewhere that we don't see too often. I love seeing that hill put into play, but equally so if we head all the way up to the northwest. Like Zaki is northwest, right? I always get the corner cities mixed up. If we head up to Zaki or something, I'd love to see that. Maybe that hill just by North George. That's always an exciting one.
Yeah, completely with you there. I think after all, it's to think about the player's mentality. Like, what do you say to your team if you're the IGL or you're the coach? Like I said, I started the broadcast by saying that this is a cognitive sport, right? The esports. So it's about that mental game. Do you have the fortitude? What do you say to yourself or your teammates and everyone, like right now in this moment, to make it count? And that will allow you to prosper in the long run. And talent's just one thing, that's very, very important. Of course, speaking of longevity, we have to see how things stack up so far. Alpha 7 still quite there, but as you can see, the gap has really started to shrink.
Yeah, it's for Alpha 7. Look, Loops probably should have, if not taken over, closed that gap significantly. There should probably only be a few points in it. But unfortunately, or I guess if you're an Alpha 7 fan, fortunately, they did have a pretty rocky game, which means that that gap isn't as big as you think. But obviously Influence Rage having a pretty good game right there, that has closed it up as well, and they are causing teams to sweat. If they can have anything similar to last match, they'll be taking first place.
Yeah, it's very interesting, by the way, to see a 35-point difference between 6th and 7th place. You can really see these 6 squads shown particular strengths. They are confident, they will take fights, and they won't just get pulled down even if they've lost a player or two. And you can see that grit in their playstyle. I can even see it, feeling it through how they characters move, right? So that's the top 6, and well deserved, I think. But we should look at the bottom half now to see who else really struggled through here. So of course, Storm, we're stuck right in there, but in the second half, we need to see who's still stuck. And of course, quite a few that's, never down is still quite down, unfortunately. Excuse me, but that is just a little bit sad to see, as we see Brazilian Killers not quite there yet. But Smoke Esports have that one chicken dinner in place to kind of get them to be closer on that chase.
It's pretty unfortunate, isn't it, for Inco to be moving down out of the top half down to the bottom. You'd really hope that they're going to be able to step it up, because yet again, they went out early, even though they weren't afraid to take fights. They did get fairly aggressive. It is just a messy zone. Maybe our final game can make a bit of a difference, but if Honored Souls can get themselves 9 points, it'll make Inco start to sweat.
Yeah, and Inco, like you said, they try to do the right thing. And when it comes to formation, though, just have a backdrop. Always have an escape plan wherever you go, and that is what we meant earlier. When it comes to macro choosing of spots, you need to know what it takes to hold it down, so that you don't really just choke yourself by being overconfident in what the spot gets to offer you. So coming into this last one, of course, it's the second week, and they already know this format, and it's been kind of the focus as well for the past competitive year. Erangel, they should know it, right? So there's no excuse if they can't even find a good way to cross where they usually cross. For example, if I'm a Zaki team, North George team, I need to have a structure going through Cube Compound to come down south. And if we don't see those prep in place, then maybe they're just not quite ready, Chunks.
No, it's going to be a tough one. Final question, all right? And I got to ask you this. It's a very easy one. We've talked about it quite a bit tonight. Are we finally getting a Millie game?
The answer, oh God, you're going to make me do this, right? Statistically, no, it's going to be a no. Okay, we'll have it on our last day. Does that make sense? So I will go with the probability today. I'll put our hopes on the best date maybe for the week. So I'm going to say no, but you know what, I think it's still going to be extremely spicy in this game, and I think teams are actually going to go all out instead of feeding them, and I think that is what the cultural side of things as well that Brazil as a region can offer. So much grit, so much passion, and they just don't stop. You don't see them playing too passive, ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's about that aggression, isn't it? That's why I think Brazil is probably up there as one of my favorite regions for PUBG Mobile. They are not afraid to go out and take a fight, and it's something I love about these teams. But we've spoke about the balance, and I want to ask your opinion. We spoke about controlled aggression a lot. We've seen the very top teams do it, but it feels like that middle bottom of the pack teams, they still haven't quite got the gist of it yet. It feels like they're maybe overcommitting to fights that they really shouldn't be.
It's interesting. I think it's about a more micro or macro view. They might have the trigger discipline for what they see, but they forgot about the parts that they don't see. And that is the difference between the top and the mediocre team. But you know what? I really hope they get the training and they start to develop that skill.
Final game of the evening. It is getting underway. We are fueling up the plane and it is taking off. We're heading over to Erangel for our final map. We're all hoping for Amelia Island to make Tarzan happy, but you never know. You never know, do you? It's one of those maps where, I mean, all maps are very unpredictable, but it feels like Erangel, it's hardship central.
Yeah, and you know what? I do have another choice, right? I'd be equally happy if they give me a prison finish, because that's gonna be so crazy. I haven't seen it in such a long time. Like more so, like than Millie Bays. Just give me a prison finish. That would be so interesting with that landscape.
I'll take it. I would love to see a little prison finish or something. Maybe, you know what I really like that I haven't seen in PUBG Mobile just yet, or I haven't had a chance to cast, I should say, is when it ends in and around Milta or Milta Power. That's probably one of my favorite areas of the map.
Yeah, I think you will, and you're going to enjoy it. I had the pleasure of casting that a good few times, but this time we are also happy to start with a little bit of a change. No more horizontal playing path down the south side. We go from Milta Power to shooting range, so making Millie Base quite interesting, because if you are not the site of Ground Zero Machineries who likes the more Novo area, then you probably might be contesting for cars to go to Sosnovka. So that's one thing to think. You know what? It's not just those teams on the South Island, Charles. I've seen in multiple tournaments the teams who likes Quarry, Pre-Moscow Therapy go through the Southern Island for that, especially because the playing path goes from south to north, right? So you touch the ground slightly quicker compared to going to farm, but doesn't matter. We stay on the east side for this phase one, and we are going to see once again these crazy positioning and outplaying when it comes to splits and such.
Absolutely. Maybe a sign of hope for the teams that there are a lot of areas that are playable, at least for the teams that drop in early, that are kind of landing inside zone. If you're a team like Alpha 7, it's an edge game. You have to play for eliminations. I don't think you can really play for that late game in the placement point. But I can't help but notice what is going on down at Millie Island right now. It looks like there's two teams landing there. For a second, I thought they were landing on each other, but it looks like they've split off.
Yeah, they just won the cars around there, and I don't know what's going to happen around Novo, but I know one thing already. I know the visual render distances, so if I'm one of them, we know that there are quite a few teams coming to the south side. So what I'm going to do, if I'm playing this game, Chance, I hope I'm good enough to do that, I'm going to control that bridge very early on. That's going to be the plan. I need to at least send one person there to just get all info so no one slept by. But you know what? That is just my thought. If it ever go close to that side, after all, prison's still in. So we are in for a potential treat, if not the biggest, right? So it's still a good side of the map to watch.
Absolutely. You can see over at the crates, going to be looting up over in Milta. It's FLA. Both teams that are not really top contenders right now, but have had a couple points on the board. You got to give them credit for that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And any change, any progression is good. Like just bit by bit, you never know which one just got you enough to have a breakthrough point. And I think this is, a lot of guts for this team to go against Influence Rage. They know they're there, like that's their home. And I think this is also the thing with Influence Rage is right now they are not quite Alpha 7 because of a small drop off last season, but people know these big names and they should and they have feared them. But is that what they're relying on to just go to their usual spots without without any contest? I feel like some flexibility is good. Like you have 2 or even 3 drop spots, or switch things up. It's game 5, drop on someone.
I mean, that's what you hope for, isn't it? But I guess when we have the full weekend ahead of us, the hot drop plays might not come out until the final day, just because I think a lot of teams are maybe hesitant to hot drop early on, because they know that if that other team does get themselves into a good position, they're going to be getting hot dropped in return.
Yeah, I think hot drops is what we want to see as people watching the game. But for those who are playing, you really need to know dynamics between 2 teams within a particular part of the map, right? For example, I hot drop Pachinki, not Pachinki, let's pick somewhere else. We hot drop Prison, right? That's a very good example. Oh, they are dropping on us. We'll go outside, we'll drive and come back and pinch them. So that is what you would induce by even coming close. So the team usually who knows that drop spot have a contingency plan if they are a decent team, right? So that's a very good example, right? You go to Prison, oops, they're not here. They saw us, they went away, and then we can't even leave. That's the real Prison for you there. And as we see Loops actually speaking of them, where they love Prison for sure, but also know that junction. I call it a claw compound. Do you like that name? Yeah. Can you see that claw, what I'm saying? It's almost like a tree man. It's like a witch with her right hand reaching out with fingers pointing upwards. Do you see what I'm seeing?
Where am I looking for this claw? I can't see it.
Loop. So where they are driving back from. So if we look at farm, if we track north, you see that huge junction 4 ways. That's where I call it. I call it the claw compound. I'll try to promote that.
I can see it. I'm looking at the map. I can see it. I'll give you that one.
Yes, I love it. Bring it over to bring it over to PC.
Whoa. That's a naughty word over here. We can't say it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all about PUBG Mobile, man. We gotta show
PUBG.
just how strong you can do on here for these teams. So Ints now are just gonna be looting up over at Crate. I'm a little bit concerned about this one though, because they have quite a tough rotation in, and there's kind of like 3 key routes they can take into this zone right now, and
yes,
all of them kind of have like 4 teams on each of them.
Yeah. And can I ask what's going on in here? Like it's so the side of BRK wants to maybe fight in Novo, and they say no, we want to go back home. Kind of low-key baited the side of BD back into here, and they're not quite ready for it for some reason. All of them are Southern Island teams. So yeah, I just got a little bit distracted watching all these mayhem unfolding, and we talked about maybe setting up around the bridge. Forget about that. I don't think some of them will even get there.
No, I think it's going to be a tough one for so many of these squads. Battling on melee base at this point in the game is just not what you want to be doing. There's no other way to put it. You are out there, you're going to be tanking blue damage. You're probably going to burn through meds before you even touch the blue just from actually taking the fight. So Black Dragon's in serious trouble right now. I kind of hope for their sake they can salvage a point or 2 out of this one, because they are just backed into a corner. And they've had signs of life tonight, and I think that if they don't get anything out of this match, it'll be a shame.
Yeah, I think there's still a chance here, but Martins need to, just pass any sort of audio cue that he can pick up. He's got, when you talk about, hey, he needs to tank and heal, got no meds at all, nothing. So it's about seeing whether he could be in position to set up something for his team. But I've been a little bit tripping as I put my eyes on the wrong place. He is alone there. So I think it's fair to say it's about goodbye, but I think that is a potential play to be made earlier. Right? If he's there earlier and his teams responded better, maybe it could be a pinch, but no longer the case. In fact, back in here, did they even do well in that last one? We hyped them up quite a bit, Charles.
I hope that they can consistently put out numbers. That's all I'm going to say. It feels like we hype up teams a lot when they have those explosive matches, but unless they're able to get mediocre performances as well, they're not going to be a top team. And that really sucks to say because, you know, you can have, in shorter format events, you can have a very big game and it completely changed the tide of things. But this is the PMP. You're in it for the long haul. You can't just have one game. You have to have 1 or 2 of those really big games, as well as being able to average like, what, 5-6 points a game minimum as well to really be up there.
Yeah. Completely agree, and that's what we've been struggling to see, to be fair, through the history of this esports. Like, teams change too quick, like with their rosters and stuff. They changed like owners, like everything from admin, every sort of staff really. So with this format, I think it's going to really crown the real winners worthy of that. It's just not like spikes of motivation and results. It's consistency, not through one tournament. Please, 2 splits, as we see the side of Quick Revenge here, trying to find a place to call home. And I do quite like this part. I think it can really show how you can hold down the macro, you know, take some dips and do some baits as well. But it seems like they are on retreat mode as they feel the pressure from the north side.
Definitely the case for now. Capiao going to start moving his way through in the vehicle. It looks like RV just want to kind of down the bottom right now. Smoke, on the other hand, seem to be posting up for a bit of an engagement. I think they realized the Influence Rage are over here somewhere, and they do want to maybe take a bit of a fight. So you can see Heck starting to make a little bit of noise, just taking some fire, maybe trying to bait them towards. But it is a risky play, isn't it? With such a kind of deadly squad that we just saw in our previous, to be baiting shots out of them. It shows a certain level of bravery, I'll give them that.
Yeah, but I really wonder what they were trying to do. Seems like they have a plan. If we really look at those orange dots right around Yasnaya, we've got one in the police station. Very common to have a standoff between that spot and across the road, but the rest of the team actually went southeast. So maybe he was just in a spot to give info, and then his teammates can strike elsewhere. But speaking of striking, I feel like Rise has never stopped. Wherever they go, they want action, and they've been trying, not quite landing the shots. Yes, Mufasa will draw back a little bit. They need to protect those vehicles.
Mufasa just going to be driving away for Rise. Remaining 4 players up. It's something that, I hate to say it, but they have struggled with a little bit. They have not been consistently there in the endgame in the way you maybe would have hoped a team of this level to be. But you know what? They are playing it a little bit more passive now. They backed away from a fight that they didn't need to take. It's just taking positives out of it at this point and trying to apply those further to the game plan and then correct the mistakes.
The pain. He knows is over. It might as well do it with style. And so yes, that's the problem with Melee. You are right, Shanks. I was a bit more optimistic, but maybe I shouldn't have faith in these teams when they just couldn't find a way to save themselves in the macro sense. So well, not quite a lot of teams really survived that southern side, but GZM as well, making it through. Now, around Lumber area, one of my favorite spots, to be fair. Tricky to play, not good for latecomers, but you can do a lot of bait and switch and actually do some outplays if you do use the landscape as well.
See how effectively these teams will be able to use it, though. I mean, the vehicles give away a lot. I don't think that... Oh, never mind. I was going to say, I don't think Honored Souls have actually spotted out Storm, but it appears that is absolutely the case, as they do spot out the movement. Honored Souls are just going to be careful. They know there's a team around and they can hear the vehicles rotating through, but as long as they kind of control everything and don't let any team sneak up on them, Lumberyard is a very strong position to play. If you lose a player, though, different story. Daden actually going to try and move in towards this fellow solo for the but it looks like he's decided to back off, and probably for the best with this zone shift.
Yeah, like, you never know. Sometimes you're trying to chase someone down. At this level, I feel like you should really feel like it might be a bait, and those are the mistakes to make. And what do you ask for, Charles? Sometimes, you know, like, you pray one time, it's answered when you least expect it. We move towards farm and potentially Milter.
Well, I'm hoping for it. I'm hoping for something like that. I'm not sure how lucky I'm really going to get, because I love those awkward zones. As long as there's a lot of hardships in it, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it. You're going to get very, very lucky, and I feel like I'm putting myself on the spot here, but doesn't matter. I've got nothing to lose. We will have a mill to finish.
No
and
pressure.
I'm sweating right now. I'm starting to sweat right now. But
No
look at that
pressure.
eastern side. Eastern side. We talked about lumber, important area for the circle as they get funneled in through this white rotation. Little do they know, many teams are already here.
Yep. Listen, still getting from the side as he tries to open up. Loop's actually going to be sending it right through the center there. That was a bit of a risky play going past an Alpha 7 player who's already shooting. Revo, though, has been able to pull up, lands the spray on towards the solo from Ints, and we'll be able to find the elimination out of it. Alpha 7, first point of the game as Storm tried to chase their second.
Yeah, and Storm, like I said, they have the veteran right in there. They just need to find the synergy and cohesion. And right now, they were in that spot that if they don't adjust well, they will get pinched. And this is the key thing about approaching lumber. You need to have a backdrop. You need to have a way around it. And I feel like, let's forget about that team. If we look at the green for Honored Souls, I feel like knowing that circle, they could have spread differently for a split to punish more teams. But they just stayed around there. And personally, I do find that a little bit disappointing.
Quick Revenge going to try and back their way out of here, seemingly. They heard some shots up the hills. They are getting ready to make a move. That eastern side is starting to look very heated, though, as more and more teams make their way through. Revo going to be pushing through for the flush onto the Storm player and potentially to hold out a second if he knows the info about them. But doesn't appear to be the case. He gets back in the car and gets straight out of there. Revo grouping up with the rest of Alpha 7 as they start to swing a little bit further towards Prison Hill.
Yep, and it's crazy, right? I feel like if we have the best luck, then we'll still get Prison. We just need mediocre luck chunks to go to Milta, and let's see whether they can do it. And like we mentioned earlier, Farm is also interesting just based on the landscapes of certain dips here and there, but mostly compounds. And these teams get funneled around by these, and then we will have a center one going kind of nowhere.
I'll take it. This is
we'll
so
take
open.
it.
This is so open. I love the open zones because it really is a battle. You already know that compound in the center is getting crashed. You just
exactly,
know.
and you just know. And then what you may not know is all the fine details, all the ridges and everything. You need to take out your ruler and do it right now. If they haven't learned it, they would need those centimeters of differences to make that count. But Rise will be on the rise if they can take this one.
Right, is it trouble? Rafinha does go down. Mythic is still there to try and provide support. Had a nade in hand, but it was just no use. The crash was destined to come through, but I'm not sure really how effective it's going to be. Nunez still on the backside, is getting peppered from range. Has to try and somehow get involved, but it just doesn't appear to be happening. Mufasa focused on boosting up. I'm not sure whether that's the play to go for, especially when Nunez is trying to stick the ride, but he can't really provide much support right now. Mufasa maybe going to try and move up the top to get a bit of an angle, switches over to the UMP. That's a sign he's ready for a close range engagement.
To be fair, to have lost only one player, I would take that as a win for Rise because, there's no space, like you said, it's so open all around, and you've got teams pinching and trying to spray you down as you enter that compound. If they even get 2 up, that would be a great one as they continue to buy time. That is an actual flush as well, but they have lost 2 confirmed, and they continue to spray in. Nunes trying to spray through the smoke, use that hip fire, and he's just running around. Look at him, he's got quick feet, and he's going to actually make it through. That's the squad wipe. With the pressure on their back, they made a count chance.
That is really impressive to see when it was really all or nothing. They were in the center. They managed to clutch it out, and that is so impressive. See, the problem is now, how many more teams are going to crash into this? Because base is becoming really limited. You can see the fight starting to kick off over on the eastern side in the form of Alpha 7 up against Honored Souls. As the nades come over the top, they're making a lot of noise, and it may force teams down to the south to rethink their strategy. And instead of maybe playing this hillside, think maybe it is better to crash into the compound and at least have some hard cover, even if it is a big gamble.
Yeah, but at what price? Exactly, that could be the gamble. How about the cars that we may need when we need them as metal shields later on, right? But sometimes when you're in that match 5, it's just about shooting absolutely everything. Honor Soul still need to get in, has the Tesla right there, but doesn't quite go in yet. They know the limits. They are thinking Mythic is maybe scouting or even baiting. And I think shifts will really dictate so much. Alpha 7, though, will be found behind the tree.
Carrillo just kind of waiting here, knows there are going to be players rotate away, just hoping that there's no one rotating towards him. Unfortunately, though, that appears to be the case. Inco are going to be hopping in vehicles, making a rotate in that direction, as Myth does exactly the same over in the direction of Storm. He peeks up over the top. Dude, it just gets absolutely laid out. 3 players him at once. It was never going to go his way, unfortunately.
Man, and you like those small micros as well. Honor Souls knows that there's someone's in front. They're waiting for a further reinforcement. That doesn't matter. Reinforcement can come in a different way. Storm Gaming with the revenge, with the beautiful nade, and doesn't even lose the player.
Really nicely done indeed, but as that zone shifts hard to the west, this is arguably the best thing that could have happened from a neutral point of view, because it is so open. It is going to be an absolute bloodbath as teams try to make their way into it. Look over at Shelter right now. Alpha 7 taking an engagement. They've just lost 1 player. Revo tries to open up with the spray, but it doesn't work out as Inco decides to just send it over. Bye-bye, go Alpha 7 as the vehicle run over is able to get the elimination. That is 13th place for them. Things are starting to fall apart up at the top of that leaderboard.
Nate sprays cars and killing yourself, Mafioso. What happened there? And they're still trying to float in, and Lord, MVP of one of that match, will not win this 1v1 against someone driving in. It's going to be chaos because it has already been, and with a really crazy crash right in there, Rise actually is in the circle, so that duo might just hold strong.
They're still just waiting as Becker accidentally spins out, crashing into another vehicle. Not able to really make a seat swap out of it, but it looks like his teammate's certainly going to try. Jumps out the vehicle and goes for it. Inco are really just sending it in now. Full Mad Max mode over towards that Wizard Tower. As the rest of Inco just up top, providing that fire support down towards Rise. If they find an opening knock, I can very likely see them making this push.
Yeah, it's very tricky timing. The Blues are coming in. No one really has a very good spot entering from that eastern side, so it's going to be a lot of neutral fights and baits. And Kowski, just so pleasant. It's like just cruising through, and it's like there's no pressure, the confidence as well. But Lil Boy doesn't make it count, but that is actually a good bait at the same time. They make space, they've done it, and they will hold that down. Now we're just waiting for the crash, waiting for that closing. But here comes another one for Loops.
Called it, didn't I? Inco do decide to push their way through. They're going for that hard cover. Has actually made a really smart strategy right here. He picked up the M249, has plenty of ammo to go with it, but unfortunately gets caught from a side angle, isn't able to turn in time as Becker also going to be taken down low. A player who we've seen clutch out in big situations, but this time it's just not going to be enough. Inco fall out in 10th, followed by Storm in 9th. Loops now 4 eliminations, but only 2 players left standing. Still 8 other teams alive.
I feel like Loops could have done that slightly differently. Just keep the other team at bay, but maybe Inco setup okay with some bait and Overwatch, so we will need to see. But nonetheless, we've got quite a few good squads in these compounds, and as we see, another shift. And that is a tough one. Like, do they even have resources to get down south there, Chunks?
No.
There we go.
Their options are vehicles or smokes, and at least for Fame, for instance, is it for, no, it's Fact Esports, that's the one. Fact yeah. Esports over on that northern side have vehicles that they're currently using for cover that have been absolutely torn apart, that have basically no time. They have used about 5 smokes already. I don't see they make it in unless somehow they have a vehicle that is full health and they maybe have like 20 smokes in the back pocket. Outside of that, it's going to be very hard for them to make it in. In terms of the team in the compound, probably equally so. If that team up on the northwest, they're able to just kind of camp them, hold them out, they're going to get knocked. This is exactly what I meant. GZM are just there watching. Down they go. That is Loops out of it. Unfortunate for them, but you know what? It's 4 points that Alpha 7 didn't get, right?
Exactly, and it's great to see some change. We talked about GZM maybe coming in better, but oh, that's a little bit of greedy one. But now here comes to blue. Is not going to be easy. Brazilian Killers with the zone bless. Let's see whether they can run away with this one.
GZM try to pop up. There's one. Now they need to try and find the others. Frog still just sneaking his way up this hillside. GZM seem to know that those shots will definitely give away a lot of info. As Mateus looking down, wants to try and get the flush onto the second. Not necessarily for the point this time, more so because he doesn't want that teammate knowing where he's sneaking up from. In the end, it will be shut down and Fact go out in 6. 5 teams left, and it's a bit of a stalemate here.
Yes, I think the tricky thing is, although you might be on a safe side on Circle, there's so many weird spots that teams can have a high ground upon you. And look at this, like, Rise is insane. They took the compound and they know exactly why, because the sightline's just too good against the rest of the circle. So as a duo, they are still playing splits, they're still taking knots, and they're just trying to decimate everyone. We need to see, though, it's not going to go be decisive yet, but as you can see, no place to really find comfort. So that's influence rage gone because of the pressure practically from Rise and then other teams pinching them.
4 teams, 8 players. Who will come out on top? You got to think it's whichever team has the player advantage here, which is barely, if anything. Mufasa pops up, fires the knock, follows it up. It's not too much of a shot to see that happen. But Rise do have a tricky situation because that zone has pulled down the hill. They're at the top of the hill, and there is no cover on the hill. They could try and hop in the vehicle, maybe send it over to that drop for cover, but it looks like Brazilian Killers are already on it, looting it, getting goodness out of it, maybe even a nice little 3 help.
Yeah, if I were them, I'd be even more aggressive. Of course, they can't just for sure know where people are, right? But I would spread across the circle and, you know, have 3 of them and 1 with the off angle to damage whoever comes in. But it's really tough to say because when you have the circle, you didn't have the high ground this time around. So it's all about being cautious at the same time. But they did make that split come through. Backpack off for Nunes because it's going to reduce the amount of info being given away. Mufasa on the other side, and seems like it could be a 4x1, maybe 4 solos that we may end up with because for some reason, Chunks, I feel like BRK might not be playing this that well.
That's a bit of a mean one, dude. How could you say that to him?
Let's just watch. I don't know why. Track records.
There we go. Feels like they shouldn't be wide open right now at the bottom of the hill. But you know what? I will give them some credit. They have a little bit of cover. They may be able to make something happen. Nunes obviously taking another player down really defeats those chances. Brazilian Killers managed to finish off 1 more. 2 players left up from Rise, and this is so sneaky from Nunes. He's using the smoke from the vehicle so that he can see through it fairly, well, a lot better than the player down at the bottom of the hill as Mufasa swings up round the side. Rise are now in a 1 versus 2, but they need to start getting aggressive. They have themselves a little bit of cover. It just comes down to this final player left from Brazilian Killers. I don't think he has to move, but I may be mistaken. The nades are coming out in an attempt of connecting. A beautiful little angle there from Maya as the zone moves in. It's going to be close. Has to go for the peek onto Nunes. Completely exposed. Nunes goes up for the jiggle peek, and there it is in the end. PMPL and a massive chicken dinner finally for them at the final game of the day. Wow, and look at the reaction. You can see the relief on their faces to be able to get that one. Rise Esports getting themselves a very important and kind of much needed chicken dinner there.
Yeah, and really like it as well, the way that they took that. They know what are the priority compounds there. Yes, it was a bet to make, but they know it so well that if there's any compound to crash and try to contest, it would be that one. And they made it through. And through, this team has shown so much aggression and confidence. So It's amazing. It's amazing to see them like this, and I think it might be the experience from PMGC that brought them back to maybe dominate the region. They are part of the one of the top dogs, and they need to continuously show this type of style to be on par with Alpha 7 and the other few.
Absolutely. Look, we are going to take a very short break, but we will be back in just a couple minutes with an update on the standings after a big chicken dinner there from Rise Esports. So don't go anywhere. We will see you in just a couple minutes.
Primeira queda, junto squad e corre pra lutear. Faz o rushão do Imba e acorda pra matar. Descarregando pente no frente, tu foi solado. Distribuindo kill, a vitória pro nosso lado.
Mapa na tela, avião voando!
We are back, and that is the end of today's games. But don't fear, we have the highlights. We have, so most importantly, we have the scores after those games. Rise coming out with a chicken dinner there. But I'll be honest, once Mufasa went down, I fully thought it was going to go in the way of Brazilian killers.
No, he just knows what they're doing. They got the food info. That's the good thing with the relative high ground, and they just pinched it well. But cheeky angle there from that solo still, and it's more like Mufasa didn't put his crosshair in the right place, but then it ended up being that 1v1, and yeah, we've got some sharp shoot from the side of Rise, and I really enjoyed how they win that one. To show one thing out of many things, Charles, is if you know the map, if you know priority compounds, you know it can only go so bad sometimes.
Yeah. Let's take a look over at the stats after that game and see how they are currently looking, because I mean, a couple of people really stole the show that match, even if they maybe didn't quite make it to the end game. So I'm excited to see who our total elimination leader is for that last match. But we're gonna have to give that a second while they just run the numbers, double check them in the background. But let me get your predictions. Who do you think has the most damage that match?
I have to say Mufasa. I feel like they have been fighting through it close enough. No, I got it. Wow, okay.
Yeah, that middle one's damage, right?
Yes, it is.
Producer Matter, can you tell? Is that middle one damage?
No, it has to be. It can't be kills, right? It can't be heals.
Yeah?
It has to be. 3 damage
it's either
doesn't make
damage
sense.
or bullet shot, and damage
No.
seems to make more sense to me, right?
No, yes. Now I can sleep happy. I can sleep very, very happy, and it's very important. Rise on the rise for this one, and carry over to tomorrow. Please, 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 because we know that they deserve to be right there if they just do this almost every game.
Yeah, just do it every game. Easy enough. Are you a coach by any chance? How do you give people such amazing, amazing analyst advice right there?
I don't know that. I just say like most of the time it's just get good, man. Like so you never know. Hey,
shoot better.
Like, just shoot better. What are you doing? Like, so not the actual advice, guys, but you never know. Sometimes certain players require a different type of input. As we have Rise coming through this game, but Brazilian Killers and Ground Zero Machineries. That's very, very important. Very, very important. Like after a disappointing start of this tournament, I feel like now people need to really consider them as a very decent middle pack, and I think if they continue this way, like by the end of this week, they just feel like at least an average team, if not more.
I gotta say though, Brazilian Killers and GZM both getting up there. Quick Revenge as well. That's a pretty good start for them. They've done very well indeed. They're going to be very happy about the points in that match. I think we should take a look down at the bottom half of that leaderboard, though, because that is what's really going to surprise a lot of people, I think. Alpha 7 only getting 3 points that game. Vivo Keyed with 1, Ints with 1, Black Dragons with 0, Honored Souls with 2. A lot of big names not able to net any points that match.
It's really tricky. I feel like Alpha 7, they were using the most used to strategy to break through the wrong side of the map. Does that make sense? Like they have something that always works around that edge, but that game, not quite there. And maybe they were a little bit rusty after 2 rough games, so they have to come back to more stronger. We've seen them do that before, like to be fair, when they set those records in winning these chicken dinners back in Super Weekend last year. They have sometimes off games like that in between. They can have chicken dinners and then the 15th place, chicken dinner 14th place, and they can come back. So really hard to track these bunch of lads. I think they just, I hope they know what they're doing. But going further down, there are still a few teams that was just hanging right there. Doesn't show any big plays, no huge big brain rotations, no big games, no big scores either, Chunks.
Yeah, let's take a look though over at the MVP and see how things currently stack up there. I'd be shocked if it wasn't Mufasa, honestly, with the performance he put up. 5 eliminations, 4 knockouts, 26 minutes survived, so much damage, and barely any heals.
And I think that's very amazing, right? Based on how they make what I call a game-winning crash. Like they read the map, they just need to take that one. So I'm just going to keep talking about that compound, to be fair. And they made it count, and that's it. So just one fight to really set the tone, and they just went for it. And very well deserved. And you know what's interesting, Chunks? They went out quite early in that first game, but the way and the mentality and the methods feels exactly the same as this one. They just saw an opening and they just went for it.
Absolutely, definitely a good sign when you're able to identify those flaws and then exploit them. So really nicely done to be able to actually make those decisions. Let's go and look and see who our top fraggers are for the day, who's been able to get the most eliminations, because you want to not only get it in one game, you want to do it consistently. And so far for the PMPL, it's Ravo just stealing the show. This isn't actually based on elimination, sorry, this is just a rating score.
Yeah, and you know what? It's good to see a representative from Rise in there. Otherwise, it was just 3-way. And it's crazy to see how even it has been. And, you know, we have seen these, you know what, like, some people say, oh, it's a bit boring, it's all these teams, but it's great. Do you know how hard it is to sometimes get certain teams to be consistent through not just months, but years, that the brand is still there. They know how to scout, they know how to develop, and they know how to maintain. So I am actually going to be very happy for the Brazilian region for showing this right now and to have this type of consistency among these few.
Yeah, really good consistency. Let's look over at the overall standings, though, because that's the one that really everyone's looking at. And a big shake-up off of that win from Rise, knocking 2 teams down a position apiece. Quick Revenge doing the same, knocking a squad down. Storm Gaming up 1. We're starting to see some real changes on the leaderboard now. And honestly, if Alpha 7 don't step it up tomorrow, Rise Esports could very easily be in first.
Yeah, but we can still see a 30-pointer separate the fourth place and the fifth place, and that is going to be an accurate representation, I think. Abilities to bounce back, abilities to take big games, and all that stuff. It's really what they all shown, and I feel like Quick Revenge and Vivo Keith shown some signs to be worth being the top pack, but it's just a game or two short, right? If you look at their aggression as well, that's what really sets them apart. Like a difference of 20 to 30 kills through these 20 games, and I think that is where we see that difference continuously, and we have more to wish for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of teams that we got to wish more from, let's look down at the bottom half of the leaderboard. As hard as it's going to be, we do how things are shifted up. Inco all the way down there, but Fact have been able to move up a position. And while GZM and Brazilian Killers, Smoke Esports haven't been able to break top 16 just yet, they're putting in a lot of good work to do it. And I would say that going into tomorrow, there's a chance that one of these teams should be able to get themselves a couple points and move up a place.
Very much so. If they follow with that same average point per day, they will get 3 digits. That's better than so many other teams in how they performed last week. So sometimes that is more important. The most recent past in how they perform might be more indicative of how they are going to do. And of course, the other teams who are not here, we're watching and preparing as well. So that's going to be a very interesting 2 more days to come between the two of us.
As we mentioned, 2 days left to come, but for tonight, that is it. So I bid you farewell. Thank you, Professor Tarzan, for joining me. We're going to be back same time, same place tomorrow for more PMPL Brazil. We will see you all then. Have a good night. We'll see you all tomorrow.
See ya.